Yeah, she wants to speak. You want to speak.
So, are there any apologies that we need to acknowledge?
Good afternoon, Chairperson. I have not received any apologies. Thank you.
So, are we cooperating online?
Yes, we are, Chairperson. You may proceed.
Thank you. I noted that I was muted. Members, is Minister here online?
Minister is not online, Chairperson.
Okay. I did receive an indication that he will be having a cabinet meeting, honorable members. I assume that he might not be able to join. If you allow me, I will start the meeting. Procedural officer, can we start?
We may start, Chairperson. You may go ahead.
Heads of department, Ms. Joanne Johnston, officials of the department and their entities, members of the media, both present and following us online, distinguished members of the public, good afternoon, Molweni, Dumelang, Goeiemiddag. A warm welcome to each of you as we convene the 7th Parliament of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Economic Development and Tourism. Honorable members, last week we were unable to complete our meeting. Today we continue the oversight work with a specific focus on economic development and tourism. However, honorable members, I must just state that the department expressed their concerns that some of their entities travel far only to go back without making their presentation. Today, entities as well as the department will have enough time to make their presentation. Honorable members, we clearly communicated during the initial invitation to the department that there was a possibility of not completing all the presentations. We also mentioned that if this happened, we will request a continuation of the presentation, which might not be in person. While we informed the department of this possibility in our initial invitation, honorable members, we also reiterated that our primary intent was to establish our first connection with the department and their entities, with the committee eager to have all team members present. Honorable members, it goes without saying that face-to-face interactions are invaluable, especially during this initial engagement. Our last engagement allowed us to put names to face, and I hope members will continue to foster personal connection, helping us establish a strong foundation for future oversight and effective collaboration with the department. Honorable members, when it comes to resolution, I will request that you note your resolution down. When we're done with the meeting, we will obviously go through the resolution that you have noted down. And before we conclude the meeting today, we will obviously look at the minutes of last week for adoption. Honorable members, I am going to hand over the department to the HOD to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Chairperson? Chair?
Yes.
Yes, just before you hand over to the department for the presentation, just for record purposes, can members just introduce themselves, please?
Okay. I'll start. My name is Noko Masipa. I'm the chairperson of this portfolio committee. Can the next member introduce himself or herself?
Thank you very
Please,
much, Chair. My name is Khalil Brankes, and I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Dave Bryant,
the
member of the
next.
committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Noel Constable, and I'm also a member of this committee.
Thank you. Next.
Noma French Mbombo, member of the committee. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, Chairperson. I'm Mason, and I'm an alternate member of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Derek Bessels here, and I'm a member of the committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
I'm
Are we done?
Walters. I'm an alternate member of the committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Are we done with the members? Do we need to allow the officials to also introduce themselves for record purposes?
Please, Chairperson. And I see we have Member Stoffel also on the platform.
Member Stoffel, do you want to introduce yourself for record purposes?
Good afternoon, Chair, and sorry for log in late. I struggled, but it's fine. My name is Member Stoffels, Beauty Stoffels, and I'm an alternate member on the committee.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is Honourable Ngondlo present in the House?
Chair, I do not see Member Nkondlo on the platform.
Thank you. Can we proceed with the department and the entities? HOD, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ask, just because it's a Teams meeting, with your permission, if we are able to introduce ourselves in alphabetical order as it appears in the people list on Teams. Is that acceptable, Chair?
Yes, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll start off. So my name is Joanne Johnston. I'm head of department of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. We have 3 entities that report through to us, where we provide oversight, and that's Wesgro, Saldanha, Freeport, and then also Atlantis SEZ. But as I said, we'll do it in alphabetical order, and I'll ask everybody just to make sure that they introduce with their title as well as the entity if it's relevant. Thank you very much. So first up would be Chantal by sheer list of alphabetical order. So Chantal and then Conrad Joseph, and I'll ask everybody just to please introduce themselves again in alphabetical order. Chantal.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And also flash up your so that they can see you. Thank you very much.
Chantal van Niekerk. I'm the Acting Director for Skills Programs and Projects under Program 7 in the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. Good day.
Thank you very much. Conrad.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and honourable members. I am Conrad Joseph. I am the Executive for Stakeholder Management at Freeport Saldanha.
Courtney.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Courtney Titus, and I'm the Assistant Director in the Office of the Head of Department.
Okay, next. David. Enrich, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Erich Loubser, Financial Accountant at Freeport Saldanha.
Thanks, Fernal.
Good afternoon, everybody. Fernal Abrams in the Cape Catalyst unit in DDAT, and I have oversight responsibility of the Atlantis Special Economic Zone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Khadija.
Good afternoon, everyone. Khadija Daris, Chief of Staff at Wesco.
Thank you very much. Gareth.
Good afternoon, Chair, honourable members. Gareth Aldenhuis, and I am from Freeport Saldanha. I'm responsible for the Transaction and Investor Support Unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dingan?
Good afternoon. My name is Goodall Dingan, also from the department. Apologies, also from the department, and I'm looking after the agri-processing sector.
Thank you very much. Herman, Bonuskans?
Good afternoon, members. I'm Herman Bonuskans, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Freeport Saldanha.
Herman Jonker?
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Herman Jonker. I'm in the Industrial Coordination Unit in the department. Also oversight over Freeport Saldanha. And a short apology, please. I might have to exit the meeting a little bit. We're in the middle of hosting an ESCOM delegation here in Saldanha, and I might be asked to step out for a minute.
Ilse van Skalkwyk?
Good afternoon, Chair. Ilse van Skalkwyk. I am the acting DDG for the Strategic Accelerators and Economic Development. So that's program, including a Chief Director for Program 3, which is Sectors, 6 Tourism, and then our Digital Economy Research, as well as all of the entities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jacques?
Good afternoon, Chairperson, members. It's Jacques Stolz. I'm Director of Tourism at DDAT.
Janelle?
I am Janelle Hartman. I am the Personal Assistant to the Head of Department for Economic Development and Tourism.
Thanks. Jean-Marc?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Jean-Marc Arnold, Head of Communications for Economic Development and Tourism.
Thank you very much. John?
Good afternoon, everyone. John Peters, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, Program Manager for Program 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Getty? I'm from Freeport. Sorry, I'm not sure if Mari, I'm not sure if I pronounced your first name correctly. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's absolutely correct. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Khethi Mulamane, and I am the Executive for Infrastructure and Environment at Freeport Saldanha. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Khalil? Khalil? No, sorry. That's incorrect. Oh, so sorry. That's the external one. Lily?
Good afternoon, everyone. Lily Consuwa within the Department of Economic Development and Tourism within the Municipal Economic Support Unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matthew?
Good afternoon,
Matt?
everyone. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Matt Cullinan, CEO of the Atlantis Special Economic Zone for Green Tech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melissa?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Melissa Parker, Director for Provincial Skills and Partnerships, part of Program 7 DDAT. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Michelle?
Good afternoon, everyone. Michelle Ellis, Director, Data Production Unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Maimuna?
Good afternoon, everybody. Maimuna Abrams, Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Economic Development.
Thanks a lot. Nizam?
Oops. Nizam Joseph, Chief Director, Skills Development.
Thank you very much. And then we have Olivia.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Olivia Dias. I'm in the Digital Economy or Technology and Innovation team at DDAT.
Thank you very much. Rahima? Rahima? Okay, Rashid?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rashid Tofi, the DDG in the department, in charge of skills, sectors and tourism, the consumer protector, and also Program 2, which is enterprise development, municipal support, and the red tape unit.
Hi, sorry, Chair. I'm Rahima Lagda. I'm Director for Skills Incentives in the Farm Economic Development and Tourism.
Thank you very much, Rahima. Sandisa?
Afternoon, members. I'm Sandy Sutwaba, the Chief Financial Officer at West. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you. Shannon?
Good afternoon, everyone. Shannon Newman, Acting Executive at Freeport Saldanha.
Thanks. Shannon?
Sorry, apologies for that. I'm Sharon Daniels Robertson, and I'm Acting Office Manager in the Head of Department. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shure.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shure Bax. I'm representing the Research, Economic Policy and Planning Unit. Thank you.
Thanks. Then Tim?
Afternoon, Chair and members. I am Tim Powell. I'm Chief Director in the Digital Economy Unit. As you'll see, we're transitioning to be running technology and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wahida?
Good afternoon. My name is Wahida Sides. I'm the CFO of the Atlantic District.
And then last but definitely not least, Renal.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, honourable members and HOD. My name is Renal Stander, and I'm the CEO of Westgrow.
Thank you very much. Chair, I'm not sure if I've missed anybody in the process. I think I captured all, but if there's anybody that I might have accidentally missed, is it possible if you could please just raise your hand? Ndile, please go ahead. Sorry about that.
No worries at all, HOD. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bandile Loa, and I'm the Deputy Director responsible for Business Process Improvements and Head of Municipal Projects in the Red Tape Reduction Unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Friedele.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Friedele Grant, and I'm the Company Secretary at the Atlantic Special Economic Zone.
And next up is Demba.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Temakazi Kobese. HR Officer for Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone.
Thank you very much. Chair, that's all of us introduced. Thank you very much.
HOD, I hand back over to you to take us through your presentation, and we'll really appreciate if the presenter can switch the video on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sitting in Beaufort West, and so there may be a slight issue around connectivity, but proves to be a little bit problematic. Chair, if you don't mind, just switch off my video, but until then, I'll keep it on. So I'd like to just say good afternoon to the Chair, to the Secretariat, to the honourable members of the Standing Committee, and I'm not sure if any media or members of the public are participating, but good afternoon to you. And I'd like to also thank the Chair and the Secretariat for affording us so much time for the introductory engagement. So we have expanded our presentation somewhat, but just to note that we'll probably be talking through some of the slides as opposed to the slides. And so the slides will probably provide a lot more detail than what we will be talking to. We may also suggest if there are any topics of interest that the Standing Committee considers, perhaps more detailed briefings on any topics that may be of interest. So it's just a little bit of an aside. Can you go to the next slide, please, Whitney? So the Standing Committee members would have seen this before with the Minister's presentation. This defines what his priorities are and shapes basically what we intend to do in the next 5 years. Of particular relevance to our department is that of business support, which essentially encompasses all the work that we do within the department. And then the second is really around market access, because as the Minister had articulated last week, it's growth that essentially drives businesses to expand and therefore create jobs. So in the 5-year plan that we will be tabling to Parliament within the next couple of months, at the beginning of next year, you would then basically see how the minister's priorities shape the activities of the department. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the brief basically asked for the mandate in the legislation that governs the core functions and activities of the department. Go to the next slide, please. This, of course, the most defining document is the Constitution of South Africa. And you can see there Schedule 4 of the Constitution. This essentially stipulates concurrent functions with national as well as provincial with regards to industrial promotion, tourism, consumer protection and trade. And if you look at the number of departments at a national level, it's all shaped with Schedule 4 concurrent activities they listed. The Constitution of the Western Cape doesn't necessarily provide a mandate, but it does provide guiding principles that are expected to shape the policies of the department. And that pertains to creation of job opportunities, promotion of a work ethic, and the promotion of a market-oriented economy. Later on, I will present the Growth for Jobs strategy, and from that you can see how we are making sure that we actualize the guiding principles as articulated in the Constitution of the Western Cape. Go to the next slide, please. National legislation is essentially, I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. This is quite specific to the department. I have not listed in here the universal sort of national legislation like the Public Finance Management Act, nor the National Public Service Act, because that essentially is within our DNA. It's what we do and it's how we do it. But of particular relevance within the Western Cape legislation are legislations that essentially enable and govern our entities. So that's the CTICC. It's not a provincial entity, it's a municipal entity, but the Act there guides effectively our shareholding and the governance arrangements as far as the CTICC is concerned. Then we have the Freeport Saldanha, which is governed by the Saldanha IDZ Licensing Company Act. We have the Western Cape Consumer Affairs, and we'll touch a little bit more on that later. We're looking to revise that particular acting going forward. We have the EDP, as well as the Special Economic Development Infrastructure Company, which is at the moment a dormant piece of legislation. We're looking at making sure that we are able to initiate that within the next 5 years. And then we have Westgrow, which has seen subsequent amendments over the last decade or so. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. This is just really how both the national and the provincial legislation lands in the department. Obviously, it has all of the legislation has some sort of degree of impact in all of the programs, but it lands in a particular way in terms of who drives it. And this is just really shaping and sort of a demonstration where you want to see how it relates to various programs, activities, how it lands in our department's APP and 5-year strategy. Next slide, please. These are the policies and strategies that shape the functions, particularly how we basically do it. So we obviously have the UN Sustainable Development. Here we have Goals 8 and Goals 9 that have particular relevance for the department. But having said that, if you look at all of the other goals listed in the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, we have relevance or some degree of responsibility and support to provide to the other goals. The African Union Agenda, obviously, there we have transforming Africa into the powerhouse of the future. And the ones that our department relates specifically to are inclusive growth and sustainable development. Then in the national strategies and policies, there's quite a number. And of course, things are with the 7th administration may well be revised, but the National Development Plan is quite relevant. And again, when I present the Growth for Jobs strategy, you see how we try to drill down on a provincial level to make sure that we support and help drive the successful implementation of the NDP. With regards to the Western Cape, the Growth for Jobs strategy, which was approved last year, the Provincial Strategic Plan, which at the moment is being revised for the next 5 years, and then we have documents like the Broadband Strategic Framework, the Western Cape Green Economy Strategic Framework, and then, of course, One Cape. And these are all policies and strategies that essentially guide what we are doing and certainly will be shaping the next 5 years in going forward. Next slide, please. So I'm just very briefly going to go into the jobs, the Growth for Jobs strategy, if you don't mind, Chair, and I'll be very, very brief. I can do a much more detailed presentation at a later stage if this is what the Standing Committee requires. Next slide. So the first one is the opportunity statement. We always talk about the problem statements, but actually the Western Cape has opportunities. And so one, we have strong governance, and particularly if you look at the Governance Performance Index, the Western Cape performs extremely well within South Africa. We have above average service delivery on a range of services according to Stats SA with regards to sanitation, refuse removal, access to pipe water, etc., etc. So we have above the average service delivery. We have pretty good infrastructure and access. So the highest in terms of access to internet, the Western Cape has the highest, 84%. Our road infrastructure is pretty solid, so we are considered in the top 2 in sub-Saharan Africa. And so we've got a really good basis to work on in that respect. With regards to the unemployment rate, yes, we have lost jobs in the last quarter, the second quarter of this financial year, but we still have the lowest official unemployment rate in South Africa at 22%. Additionally, our labor absorption rate at 52.9% is it's considered the best in the country, and that indicates that the province has the ability to create a higher proportion of opportunities for job seekers. And then lastly, there are unique investment and export opportunities, and these are numerous across the board. So in BPO, 65% of the industry is located in the Western Cape, and we are far considered to be one of the best destinations globally as far as offshore call centers are concerned. We are UNESCO Design Capital, World Design Capital, Wesgrow, as well as our tourism program will talk about the numerous awards that the province has received with regards to us being a travel destination. We have the best brandy, we have the best olive oil, we have some of the world's best restaurants. So there are a number of unique opportunities that we have within the Western Cape, but we are not without problems. Could you to the next slide, please? So we are very much part of South Africa, and we benefit from that, but we also we experience the same challenges as South Africa and our sister provinces. So we track the South African GDP rate, and you can see on your left-hand side essentially how the Western Cape tracks the rest of the country as far as GDP growth rate is concerned. So the last 10 years, South Africa averaged 1.2% GDP growth rate, the Western Cape 1.5%. And then also, since if you look at the employment and the unemployment rates, you can see that since 2013, the Western Cape has managed to actually create about 489,000 jobs. And that basically meant that by last year, we have 2.7 million people employed. But this is basically outstripped by the labor force, which has been growing faster than we've been able to create employment. So that's effectively our challenge, is that we're not growing fast enough. We're not creating enough jobs to absorb the additional labor that is coming into the province. So yes, next slide, please. So when we basically did the analysis, the growth for jobs strategy is very evidence-based and data-led. If you look at the grey slide on the grey line on the left-hand side, would indicate that that's the status quo. So if we just carried on as we normally are, we would have reached our economy by 2035 would have reached essentially just about 800 billion rand. With the growth for jobs strategy and given the ambitions that we of growth, we have targeted essentially 1 trillion rand. And the reason we've done that is on your right-hand side, you can see how GDP and employment are very much intertwined. So for every 1% of GDP growth, employment historically grows by 0.6%. So the problem in South Africa has not really been about jobless growth. It's really been about an absence of sufficient growth to create and absorb the labor that is coming into the province. So the target of 1 trillion essentially means higher growth, and the higher growth means more jobs. And that's essentially the nub of what the strategy is about stimulating sufficient growth so that we are able to create sufficient employment. The projections are showing essentially a range that if we achieve that growth rate, and essentially it means 3.8% on average, but we know that we can't immediately start with 3.8. It's going to be a gradual incline, exponential. So growing slower at the beginning and then faster towards the end. As we address some of the binding constraints that inhibit a higher growth rate. If we are able to reach that 1 trillion target, we would effectively be able to create between 600,000 to 1 million jobs over the next 11 years. And we provided the range essentially because it depends on the nature of the growth. Our target and ambition is to make sure that it's as labor absorbing as possible, but sometimes growth means you might have growth, for example, in a green economy, for example, where it's capital intensive, but perhaps less labor absorptive. Next slide, please. So our growth for jobs strategy, and I do apologize for those members that have seen this before, but our vision is basically that our provincial economy is one that will achieve breakout economic growth, resulting in sufficient employment and opportunity, and an economy that is sustainable, resilient, diverse and thriving, generating confidence, hope, and prosperity for all. Each of these words are unpacked in the strategy so that it's understood what is meant by them, and essentially making sure
Did we lose?
May I switch? I'm going to switch off my camera if you don't mind. Okay, thanks.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you. And so, trillion rand inclusive economy growing in real terms and growing on average 5% per annum. This will be achieved through an enabling competitive business environment in which growth is driven through businesses exploiting opportunities. And this is essentially frames the 3 pillars of the strategic framework. The 3 pillars, one talks about enabling the business environment. So it's important that we are having an environment where businesses are able to grow, they don't experience challenges, that they have the electricity, they have the water, they're able to move their goods as they require, and they have the skill sets that they require for their workforce, the skills that they require for their workforce. But we understand that having an enabled environment is not in and of itself sufficient. So 20 years ago, I used to be in investment promotion, and things are really different then. In 20 years ago, in the World Competitiveness Report, South Africa was ranked 36 in terms of competitiveness. Today we are 60, but then we were 36. We had the second cheapest electricity in the world and an abundant supply of it. The Port of Cape Town was considered to be one of the better ports in the world in terms of its efficiency and turnaround times. Of course, today it's very different, but even then, the fact that we had an enabled business environment still didn't result in high economic growth rates. And so it's not sufficient just to enable. You need to actually help stimulate the economy. And that is where we have support growth opportunities as well as stimulate market growth, because that's enabling, but then also stimulating the economy. And then, of course, we should not forget that what binds these three pillars together is essentially the geographic locations of this economic growth. And so we need to make sure that we coordinate and land this across the province, which is quite important to the strategy. Next slide, please. So in the near term and the medium term, we've identified 7 priority areas, and this is really how we horizontally enable the economy. So it's not trying to only help a few, but try and help across all business, across the economy as much as we can. It's about addressing key binding constraints and the most pressing issues that prevent the growth. And then, of course, it's undertaking those interventions and areas of activity that's going to help us reach the goals and the vision. And so we're talking about investment, we're talking about exports in domestic markets, energy resilience, water security, tech and innovation, infrastructure and connected economy, and then improved access to economic opportunities and employability. I'm going to touch on each of these very, very briefly, Chair. Next slide, please. So in the investment space, it's quite important. So we have a target of essentially private sector investment being 20% of regional GDP, and this translates to 200 billion by 2035. This is quite aligned to the NDP goals, and also we need to understand at the moment, private sector only contributes 12.5% to the gross fixed capital formation. And this is in comparison to our peer average of 27%. This is in part a function of the lack of enabled or the challenges we have in our business environment, but also a signal of the lack of confidence and market growth. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to go into each of the interventions in detail, just to understand that this articulates the initial interventions. Depending on the circumstances, they may change, or then we may find other more pressing issues that matters that we have to deal with. But just to talk about the themes, so on one, it's about smart investment promotion, facilitation and support, because effectively it takes a team to land an investor. So Wesgro is responsible, but Wesgro is also reliant on a supporting team in the municipalities, from the province, in other departments, and also in national, to make sure that we are able to land the investment that's required. Enabling competitive environment, at the moment, the most pressing issue is visa challenges, but there are going to probably be more in going forward, and we'll deal with them in terms of what are the most pressing ones, because obviously we don't necessarily have the capacity to be able to deal with all of it at the same time. And then the last is the strong support of ecosystems of collaboration, intelligence sharing and trust. Next slide. With regards to market growth through exports and domestic markets, here we're looking at the goal being the value of the Western Cape exports of goods and services, inclusive of tourism, will triple by 2035. And so that is quite significant, because at the moment, our star export performance is agriculture. And you had a presentation on them last week, of course. But agriculture last year represented 42% of our exports. Now, if we go through another drought, then it basically means that our exports is going to plummet. So we do need diversity in the goods and services that we export. In 2023, our exports were valued at 166 billion rand, And tripling basically means that we'll get pretty close to 500 billion by 2035. So our objective is really around having strong domestic market capability, and that we are a leading export region in diversified basket of goods and services and a sought-after tourism destination. Next slide, please. So how are we going to do that? Is one, by unlocking an enabling and competitive export environment. It's about strengthening and diversifying our Western Cape export base. And then finally, by driving market access. And of course, Africa is currently already our biggest export region, and we're looking to, one, intensify that, but then also diversify to other areas of the globe. Next slide, please. So energy. So now we've got 143 days of load shedding free. We've 143 load shedding free days. So to a lot of people, this may not necessarily then be a crisis any longer, but it is still a major issue, even if we have a short-term sort of gain around addressing our current shortage of electricity. So this continues to be a key priority of the province, and the idea is here not to be independent of Eskom, but it's really to be reduce our reliance on energy from Eskom. And we provided a range at the moment. We currently use about 2,300 megawatts of energy, but if we do the projection of growth, then obviously more energy is going to be required. This in of itself will generate actual investment of between about 20 to 70 billion rand. But I think what is critical here is 4 of the Western Cape's top export markets, 4 countries, which are responsible for more than 50% of our exports, have at least 2 carbon pricing tools in place. This basically means that if we don't actually address the fact that we are the world's 3rd highest emitter of CO2 per capita, all of our exports to those 4 areas, 50% of our exports are going to be under severe pressure if we don't actually shift the carbon intensity of our energy. And so this remains a critical priority of the Western Cape strategy. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I'm definitely not going to go into this a lot of detail, but this is really around how we work with national and the municipalities and with private sector to make sure that we actually have the shift towards our net zero carbon goals of 2050. In addition to that, though, there is quite a number of opportunities. And so we need to make sure that we are better able to leverage those opportunities. One, with green hydrogen, with regards to renewable energy manufacture. And so our entities in Atlantis and Freeport Saldanha, with support of Wesgro, are working to make sure we land and maximize that opportunities, one for GDP growth and then also for jobs. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. Water. So, no, go back. Okay, so again, it's the wettest July I think we've had in 60 years in some areas of the Western Cape. It is the most rain that they ever recorded since they could started. But water security and resilience is still continues. I don't know if people remember, a couple of months ago, people were really worried that there was no rain. And you cannot plan for a drought when you're in a drought. You have to anticipate well ahead of time to make sure that there's adequate water available. And this is quite critical because businesses are not going to invest unless they know that there's water available. So at the moment, South Africa is in the top 30 most water-stressed countries in the world. Despite that, we use per person per day 233 liters of water in comparison to the international average benchmark, which is 180 liters a day. So despite the fact that we are water scarce, we use a lot more water than our international counterparts. So essentially the strategy is really about how we double the water amount of water available for secondary and tertiary economic sectors, but using primarily it for non-productive use. And what we mean by that is, for example, the city of Cape Town uses the most water in the Western Cape. 64% gets used in the metro. Of that, 60 to 70% gets used by households. So the bulk of the water is actually used by households, often to be used for watering lawns and filling pools. And so we need to shift that to a much more productive use. Next slide, please. So the strategy really just basically looks at how, one, we can make sure that we conserve as much water as we possibly can. With infrastructure maintenance, for example, 17% of our water gets leaks through pipes, and how we do it smart. There was an announcement yesterday at the City of Cape Town using the smart water systems to detect where there is leakages so they can try and fix it as quickly as possible. Looking at alternative water costing models for municipalities, 10% of their revenue gets from water. So if you want to decrease the way households use water, then basically you have to look at alternative methods. Supply side management is, are there alternative methods to supplement our current supply? 98% of our surface water is already allocated. We have to find new sources of it. And then, of course, coordination is key with national, and then demand side management is raising awareness of our water usage and trying to bring it down. Next slide, please. Then in terms of research and technology, so research has shown that tech and innovation is the key driver for growth and improvements in total factor productivity. But South Africa spends about a third on R&D expenditure compared to our counterparts. And so basically we have to increase this if we want to grow, and two, also to improve our total factor productivity. So the goal here is research and development expenditure will increase by 300% in real terms and reaching 35 billion, and venture capital deals will total 20 billion by 2035. Next slide, please. I'm going to try and go a little bit faster. Passionate about this presentation on growth for jobs. So this is really around how do we strengthen the ease of doing business and promote the ecosystems in tech and innovation, because it's all about know-how, and know-how can only be shared through networks. You can't necessarily study it. So the Harvard Business School is quite firm that it's the ecosystems that tend to drive tech and innovation more than being able to study for it or learn it. Then two is stimulating growth and the demand of growth in tech startups and scale-ups. Three, it's really establishing the Western Cape as a venture capital hub for startups and scale-ups, making sure that there's access to that, and then supporting human capital development through a range of means, right from school all the way through to the tertiary institutions. Next slide, please. So infrastructure and connected economy. Here again, we're looking at the Western Cape having the infrastructure required to support and enable a R1 trillion economy by 2035, and that public sector capital investment in the Western Cape will be 10% of regional GDP. This is also a national development plan goal. At the moment, we are only at about 4% or 4.1% last year in terms of public sector spend overall, so woefully short of the 10% projected by the NDP as being critical for meeting the objectives. Provinces generally only contribute 16% to the overall 100% public sector spend. So here we're not saying it's about necessarily the Western Cape government spending a hell of a lot more. It's really about making sure that we work in partnership and we support all of the entities, the public sector entities and departments that that invest in and build and do their build in the Western Cape. So that's quite important. And also the projection is often when they do infrastructure planning, they don't necessarily project higher growth. They usually take a look, they look at the past and then they just simply take that and project it forward. So earlier I was saying that South Africa and the Western Cape only grew by 1.2%, which basically means that when you look at what infrastructure you have to plan, you're then only accommodating for a 1.2% growth rate going forward. And that clearly is that you're planning to fail in terms of growth and jobs. And this goal essentially starts to shift that planning narrative quite substantially. Moving forward, please. So this covers basically coordinated, so making sure that we coordinate and we strengthen the ecosystems amongst the various stakeholders. It's looking at ease of doing government, because often we find that the regulations in the way that's understood and interpreted prevents collaboration amongst the various stakeholders, either with government and private sector, or alternatively between government and government. Then we're looking at infrastructure being a catalyst for ecosystem, targeted economic growth opportunities. We're looking at digital and hybrid infrastructure, and then logistics and mobility, which talks not only to the movement of goods for businesses, but also the mobility of our citizens to get to their workplace and other things that they actually need to do to be able to function. Thank you. Next slide. I'm almost finished, Chair. And then improved access to economic opportunities and employability. So here it talks to all citizens that want to be economically active, have improved access to economic opportunities and employability through at least one pathway. And their pathway is understood, for example, as do they have the knowledge, do they have the experience, do they have the competencies, do they have the skills, do they actually understand what opportunities there are in terms of their own careers, having capabilities and skills in terms of the workplace, and then also are they accessible and are accessible to the communities, and then of course entrepreneurship. Here I just want to draw attention to the map of the metro. And so on your left-hand side, you see a graph that talks and shows the lit up areas, and that's actually where the economic opportunities are. That's where the jobs are. But the little graph on your right-hand side are showing where people live. And so when we talk about access to economic opportunities, that's a systemic problem that we have to overcome, because already people spend between 20 to 40% of their salaries just getting to work. And so that's when we talk about access, improved access, we are also including those factors of mobility in terms of where the jobs are located. Next slide, please. Done. So this again just talks about how we intend to go about it. It's structured in the pathways that I just spoke about. So there's education-based and competency-based pathways, and this, to a large extent, the PFA is driven by the Department of Education with support from DDAT. So that's driven by education and starting to shift how education is actually being done to make sure that the learners are a lot more work ready. They have built some of the competencies that are required by the future employers. The second is about post-school and tertiary education. We're working with CHEC with regards to that in the TVET colleges. Looking at improved workplace skills and productivity pathways, and then of course bringing opportunities closer to citizens and vice versa. Next slide, please. And then enhancing entrepreneurship pathways, and this talks about culture, the tools that entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs require, the support, and then of course the enabling environment to reduce the friction for them to actually set up businesses and be supported through the development, through all the way through to success. And then lastly, coordination is vitally important. As with all the other PFAs. Next slide. And last slide for the growth for jobs. This is just to say that we understand it's an 11-year strategy. And so to a large extent, some of the work that we're doing now, as long as it's aligned to the growth for jobs strategy, still continues. But with time, we probably have to decrease it as we look at those interventions that will help the economy to transition to higher growth. As well as there are pockets of the future, we may not necessarily fully understand what those future scenarios are, but we can start planning for it. So an example would be, for example, green hydrogen. It's a nascent industry, but if we are able to land it, it will have an incredible impact on our economy in a very, very positive way. And so those are sort of pockets of the future that we really now need to build in and start building our capabilities towards. Next slide, please. Okay, so our strategic planning processes, I'm going to go through this quickly. Next slide, please, Courtney. So now we've got the economic strategy, our growth for jobs strategy that provides a solid foundation and framing of what we have to do in the next 5 years. But obviously, it's a new administration, so we have had a number of workshops with the cabinet that have provided us with their priorities, as did our minister. We've begun to internalize that, again framed within the growth for jobs strategy, but also framed within the provincial strategic plan. So there are the segues between the growth for jobs strategy and then also the wellness VIPs of the province, as well as the safety VIPs and the governance priorities of the province. And it's really how we don't operate in silos, and it is transversal, and so it's how we can collaborate to support the various VIPs from being, to enable better alignment and impact. We are in the process at the moment of drafting the strategies, to be deepening it and populating the various templates. The idea is that we obviously have to shape it according to the fiscal priorities that will be issued by our provincial treasury and cabinet. We will be finalizing the draft of both the 5-year and the APP almost concurrently. But obviously the APP will flow from what sits in our 5-year plan. So those are just the target dates that we were working previously towards. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's just a bit of a framework. We will now go to our organic. Yes.
Can you wrap?
Do you want me to stop? I can't hear.
Yes, HOD, I just asked if you can wrap up in the next 3 minutes.
Okay, for the whole strategy. I've just presented the strategy. I haven't even gone to the detail.
How long is it? How long is this going to take?
I think if you're able just to give us another half an hour, please, Chair. Please.
No. Okay. Members, just hold on, HOD. Members, we still have got the Wesgro and another entity. So another 30 minutes, it will take us to complete the other presentation. That will mean up till what, 3 o'clock, and then we'll have question and answers from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Will that be enough time, members, to engage thoroughly with the presentations? You're not audible? Say okay. All right. Thumbs up. Thanks, HOD. You can proceed.
Thanks. I will go fast. Okay, so this is the organogram of the department. We have 32 posts on the SMS level. 11 are vacant, so we have a 34% vacancy rate. The ones,
HOD?
Yes.
HOD? Yes, I see Honorable Ngondlo hands is up. Honorable Ngondlo?
No, thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon to all colleagues. Chair, I think I wanted to request, whilst I note the other members who are okay with the time, because my worry is the time that is given to members to engage is actually very little versus the time that the presenters take. So if we are going to have almost 2 to 3 hours of presentation and just an hour for members, then it means we are not giving members sufficient time to engage. I would like that we really ask officials, their presentation should not be longer than 30 minutes. If so, it should be at least 45, but it can't be more than an hour.
Noted, Honorable Ngonto. Honorable Stubble.
The Chairperson, thank you very much. Mine is in the same, but I think it will only be proper for us to get all the presentation. If we don't have enough time, then the Chair allow us to also send written questions to all the presenters so that they can then respond also in writing to us if that is possible.
Good, thank you. I think what this will do is that it might just limit the WESCRO and the AEZ and HOD. You will assist us in terms of really ensuring that we've got enough time to engage thoroughly with the presentations. I hand over.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, so this is, we will be brief. As I said, we will talk through rather than to the slides. So this is the organigram of the department. The ones that are in with people in it with red borders are just the senior management that we do have on our structure, but essentially is working in other departments to assist, particularly on the energy priority focus area. So effectively, our full rate is we have 19 SMS members. Next slide, please. This is the structure of the program. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because each of my colleagues are going to be presenting on it. Next slide, please. And then this is the cultural journey. At this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Rashid Tofi, just to quickly take us through this. Rashid, 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So the process, we're very fortunate to have 3 things happening at the same time. We have a new minister, a new HOD, and we have a unique opportunity while we are doing our strategic response to the G4J as a department. We're also undergoing an OD, a restructure of our organization, restructure. And in that process, we're doing what's called a culture journey and working on how do we change the culture to be more high delivery. Next. Part of that culture journey is focusing on shifting the behavior of staff, making us more agile, and basically making us future fit for a different way of doing business. We know exactly what to do. HOD just said that, what we need to do and how we need to do it, but this is the way we do it. Next slide. And that process is not only us, but also making everyone in government. So this ease of doing government program is something that we're going to do to make shifts with the way officials respond to client needs. So we want to be citizen centristic, but we need all departments to get that new way of thinking. So we will be bringing everyone along, making sure every department responds in a way that is citizen first. Next. And part of the way we do that is we run various programs of inspiration sessions, bringing in and inspiring speakers. We're using various methodologies like problem-driven iterative adaptation, design thinking, and also really activating our social activities so that we build a team, because you can't change the culture of an organization if from a team point of view, people are not loving their jobs, understanding the purpose. So we have an activity program that's very thorough throughout the year. Next. Thank you, HOD. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please, Courtney. And then we be handed the CFO. Rimana?
Good afternoon. I'm going to try and be brief. So I've been asked to just present on the budget allocations over the MTEF. Maybe just to note that 24-25, the current year that we are in, we're obviously delivering in terms of a budget of 480 million. However, based on what the HOD has outlined, that budget that you're seeing now will probably move or change in terms of the 25-26 and 26-27 financial year. But just to note, we've got the three biggest programs. Is our trade and sector development program, which is basically with Westgrow's house within that area. Then we have economic planning, which are two public entities, IDZ and the SEZ's house within that area. And then we have the tourism, arts and entertainment. Again, the Westgrow DMO section is within that area. And then the last program is skills development and innovation, which is also one of the largest programs, where, as the HOD has explained earlier, the employability program activities, where our skills development programs across the various sectors is currently being budgeted for. Next slide, Courtney. Then just in terms of economic classification, similar to what I've said earlier, this department's biggest budget items is the personnel. So you're seeing it in terms of the COE. Then you should also be seeing it in terms of transfers and subsidies. And again, the area related to departmental agencies is where it's being demonstrated that the biggest part of our budget as a department lies within our public entities, Westgrow, Saldanha IDZ, and Atlantis SEZ. Next slide, Courtney. Then we were just asked to highlight some of financial management's achievements. I think for us as a financial management unit, we pride ourselves in not only being or achieving the highest level of financial governance, it's important for us to also achieve or be an enabler in terms of service delivery. So again, we've got various the area specifically related to us being able to attract a lot of donor funding, and that's, I think, mainly related to the fact that we have good governance, but also probably a highlight for us is that we're one of the lowest costs in terms of audit fees, and that's because the financial management unit is one of the few departments that's fully virtual. So our audit was done basically online with AG not having to actually be at the department to do the audit. There are other areas which, again, based on the time, I'm not going to go through any of it, but it is in the slides. And just again, I think for us, the clean audit is important, but more importantly, how we respond to things like our turnaround time, payment turnaround time, and how our efficiencies in terms of bidding, audit automation, etc., are the areas that we take pride in. In terms of challenges, I think in the Courtney, next slide. The last week, my colleague from agriculture also highlighted similar challenges. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but maybe just to say, I think this is challenges across financial management, across the province, and probably some of the national departments as well. But it's areas like the archaic legacy systems, BAS, LOGOS, etc. It's also around the complexities and also the ever-changing legal environment. We are in the public sector. We have legislation that is cumbersome, but also ever-changing. And there's a lot of different interpretation in terms of those areas. Joe, I think that's me. I'm not going to go into any of the other areas, just to waste some time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO. Okay, next one is strategic and operational management. This is just to say this is the establishment of the department. You'll see it soon enough in the annual report, but essentially we have a 38% vacancy rate at the moment. Our employment equity priorities become quite difficult because of the DPSA circular around the process of trying to re-establish, or as people resign or retire, our ability to replace them are quite limited, which means that we've sort of lost control, if you like, of the employment equity targets that we've had. But to a large extent, we are looking at a organizational review process. And also to fill the critical post within DDAT, we have re-established a human resource committee that looks at the key priorities against key criteria that's important for the department. Next slide, please. This is the strategic and operational support. Just basically, they do the corporate relations. So it's a lot of the compliance and governance issues, and they also provide, in conjunction and support of the CFO, the financial compliance issues. They essentially deal with a lot of the non-financial compliance and governance issues, as well as providing support across the department as far as APP coordination, IT, and et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. Joe Mark, can I ask you very quickly to go through it? 1 minute.
Absolutely, Joe. So in addition to the slide, it's just basic to indicate that while the communications unit offers the traditional sort of raising awareness about the department service offerings to our stakeholders, that given the transversal strategy, it also requires a transversal communications approach because there are many departments involved. So within the Western Cape Government brand, we have a focus on optimism and work. And in essence, what we're saying here is that the optimism that the economy generates in this context and which needs to be communicated is that of economic optimism, which, if you can go to the next slide, which roughly for us translate into business confidence, consumer confidence in the Western Cape economy, and then also in the services delivered by the Western Cape Government, domestic and international travel, things like investor confidence, and then promoting optimism in economic recovery, which outside of things like pandemics, it's also things like floods, things that threaten potential livelihoods of businesses. And then how we interpret the work, this is the communications that we inject into the economy from a perspective of identifying issues that require communication, whether it's through lobbying, through the media, or whether it's things requiring application of leadership. And then, of course, in most contexts, things about issues of opportunity, and then also highlighting successes across the various economy-related departments. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. And then we hand over to John, who's going to do the amazing work that he does in a very short space of time in terms of communication. John?
Thank you very much. Okay, let me start very quickly. If we look at the first slide, we call Integrated Economic Development Services. Sometimes the name comes up as economic enablement. We've got 3 components that sits under this program. It's enterprise development, regional and local economic development, and then red tape reduction. Each one of them contributing in their own way with regard to making it easy to do business, either through supporting SMMEs or through supporting municipalities and the local stakeholders, and then obviously looking at things like regulatory reform and then also business process improvements. Next slide. So if we just glance quickly and we just try to put at 3 or 4 of our successes that we've sort of achieved the past year. And the one is obviously the alternative energy program, where we provided support to municipalities who actually have through the booster fund sort of erected what they call trading hubs. And what we did was that the trading hubs that was erected, we had a situation where the local entrepreneurs weren't trading properly because of the electricity shortage. We then provided solar panels for these facilities, which meant they could trade. We also then backed it up with things such as generators and things just to keep them going, right? So that is the program. I think it's 135 businesses we assisted there, and that was mostly outside of the metro area. Then the other very successful project, which is basically a well-spent 1 million rand, what we basically did was a capital matching exercise there, where we created a platform where providers of capital, such as banks and the DFIs, DFI being CIFA and IDC, provided access to finance. We brought the groups together, those wanting finance. And so far, you'll see there we secured and finalized 11.8 million rand worth of finance, and the secure and in process is 247. So we're looking at this project generating about 259 million rand for our local SMMEs in the Western Cape. And then the Booster Fund, it's an ongoing fund. You'll see there we've assisted 205 businesses. The nice thing about this fund, it's a partnership fund. So whatever we put in, we try and leverage maybe similar to what we actually put into that thing. That also boosts the ecosystem. Some of the challenge that the guys have that we pick up is that if you look at across the provinces, we're about the smallest enterprise development unit in the country. Thank you. Okay, then some of the enterprise development interventions, and I'll try and cluster it so it makes it a little bit easier. Obviously, the booster fund, and then like I said, I explained it previously, but we're probably going to have something separate on this one to explain it. And then we've got a 3-year agreement with the JSE. It's the 2nd year this year. Next year will be the 3rd year, and we're looking at expanding that not only to provide access to funding, but also some sort of incubation for those businesses that are bubbling under. They just need to get over that threshold. So that's the second one. The third one is the public sector supply development, where we're looking at supporting SMMEs that get tenders from government and municipalities. How do we make them more ready? How do we make them more compliant? And how do they basically add into the pot, just in terms of joining business or starting businesses? Then if we look at 4, 5, 6, and 7, it's all about helping or promoting the enterprise culture. Now, I personally also use a lot of information that comes from the GEM report. The GEM report is a global entrepreneurship monitor, looks at about 159 countries every year. And one of the things that have come out of that report is that we tend to have in the Western Cape and, of course, in the country, a low entrepreneurship culture. So this culture, you'll see, there is broken up from the high schools right up until to almost adults in terms of promoting entrepreneurship, right? So that again ties in with PFA 7, which is also a pathway to empowering people, right? Yeah, then 9 would be the digitization, which is almost an internal project, because what we want to basically do is to be able to capture interventions done across provincial government. Say, for example, in infrastructure, they've got projects to do with contractor development. In DEDP, they've got projects to do with waste recycling. We want to actually pull all of those things together so that when we present and somebody asks us, what is Western Cape government doing for SMMEs? It doesn't mean we're able then to provide a far broader range of support that is provided by the provincial government to SMMEs. And then the last one, there's obviously the booster fund, which is sort of, we always carry it forward from the previous year because there's some projects that just run over to the next financial year. Thank you. Next one. Then the RLED, which is Regional Local Economic Development Achievement. Some of the achievements that we got there is, again, we've assisted municipal trading facilities, and that was a project that we worked with the enterprise development component. And then the other one we did was with the Startup Drive. Now, this is a very interesting, it's an international program where you provide a sort of link on the participating municipality, and inhabitants or citizens of that municipality can get trained in entrepreneurship development. So we pushing that, and so that you have a situation where entrepreneurship support is provided, is accessible to anybody outside of the metro. In other words, it's equally accessible to anybody outside of the metro as it is accessible inside the metro. The other one that we had there was, I was quite involved in that one, is the West Coast municipal capacity building exercise there. There we looked at how do we strengthen the LED strategies, but most also important, not only the planning, but also the implementation of plans within the local municipality. I was last week in Saldanha, where we facilitated a sort of working relationship between business and the municipality. So that is something which we want to get involved in, because what you find is in these municipalities, there's a them and the us, and that doesn't bode well for economic development and growth. Some of the challenges that we have there, we do have a vacancy rate there, but also again, we have a situation where if we had more people, we'd be able to cover the various districts far more adequately. Thank you. Okay, just some of the projects that we got here, and I know it's a very...
John,
yes?
John, just maybe don't cover the actual projects. We can just go to the key issues. I think they're a bit constrained for time.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So
okay,
yeah. So okay. Let's go to the program to the regional and the rate of reduction.
Just do the achievements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the achievements and the mandate.
Yeah. Okay, the achievements, basically, a lot has to do with what we did in the municipalities. So there's some examples of where we've started, but also we'll be looking at expanding in those specific areas. For example, in the building plan application process, we started that, but we're looking at expanding that because that is an issue that touches on stuff like investment and also exports, right? And then also we did about 2 years ago, we did a project with the liquor authority where we looked at digitization, the e-license application process on that one. Next one. Okay, here's some of the achievements also in terms of regulatory reform. And this is an area which, again, can provide systemic reform and systemic change in the conditions for businesses. Just for the things that we did there was a model SME policy. We provided that to municipalities where they can sort of chop and change how they want it, but it's basically a framework. And it also improved film and prevent event permitting.
If we can just maybe, John, we've lost you. Just move on to the next slide, please, Courtney. Okay, so I'm going to just talk to this in seeing that John is lost. So in terms of the case management, there's quite a number of queries that come through, but you can see the one they do.
HOD?
Yes, yes.
There's no slides flighted here, or is it here? Okay.
The slides are flighted. It's just that we've lost John Peters. That's just to say that there's a high volume of inquiries that come through. We do also a survey to make sure that people are happy with the service, and then also making sure that we track the resolution rate. In certain cases, we obviously can't necessarily make everybody happy, but it's certainly it's whether that's resolved. And then, of course, there's impact over the PSP period. John's next slide, please. Frozen. Okay, then move on, please. And then we'll go to program 3. Also, can you please, again, mandates and just the accomplishments, please? Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, HOD. So just in terms of program 3, so the focus is on 2 sub-programs. One is in trade and investment promotion. So this is where the Wesgro's budget lies with regards to exports and investment promotion. And sub-program 3.2 is sector development, which deals with all the priority sectors that's supported, as well as the export and investment PFA work. Next slide, please. So just some of our big achievements from the previous financial year is we launched our Export Competitive Enhancement Program called ECEP, and it's open currently for its 2nd year. We got over 80 applicants. We've supported 13 companies through that. We've also done our export roadshows, going to every single district, making sure we put exports on the map with business chambers and getting more and more people to consider becoming exporters. We've also done our annual port dialogue, and then we're working with a range of companies and organizations nationally. Next slide. So we also do a survey through all the companies that's come through our export roadshows, and just shows what do they need, from training to financial assistance to export documentation, logistics. A lot of them, you would know this from the media and everything that's in the news, but port and logistics is a key constraining factor for our exports, and our target is to triple exports. So that is something that's very much on our radar, and we're working very hard to unblock this. Next slide. So this is just a very quick summary of some of the programs and activities that's housed under program 3 from our export capacity building program. So this year we're going to be launching a web online training to the ECEP fund, which I mentioned, which is in phase 2, as well as with regards to our municipal investment readiness work. We are in the planning stages for our Western Cape Investment Conference Summit, which is taking place next year, as well as some of the sustainability work under JET IP, CBAM, and the decarbonisation, focusing on manufacturing. There's also work we're doing in terms of some barriers, both from a film incentive impact assessment, and then, of course, the port and logistics work. It's one block, but it's a massive piece of work that we're doing in terms of port efficiencies, as well as a whole range of improvements that we're working with Transnet, as well as the City of Cape Town, infrastructure, mobility, as well as Department of Agriculture. Next slide. So this is similar to program 2, just some of the activities. And again, we've got a strong export focus, investment, as well as in terms of where we're dealing with port sustainability. And then, of course, the Wesgro's budget sits here in terms of trade and investment. I'm not going to go into all the detail linking to every slide. Thank you.
Okay, Rashid.
Thank you. Next slide. So the responsibility of the Office of the Consumer Protector in this province falls within the DDAT's domain, and that takes three things that we have to do. Next slide. The first thing is we're in charge of consumer education, so we do things like radio shows we do direct meetings in every one of the 30 municipalities. We go out and we help people with consumer education, financial literacy, and so forth. And one of our exciting projects this year has been our industrial theatre program. And we're going to do a show one day, and I'd like to invite the standing committee to come and see that show and see what we do. Next slide. The next thing we do complaints resolution. So people call a call center. It's a very successful program, and we're able to do what we call dispute resolution. We're able to solve people's problems, and when we can't solve their problem, we escalate it to other appropriate bodies like the rental housing tribunal or the retail motor industry. Next slide. The third element is that we now have a tribunal. It was recently set up, a Consumer Affairs Tribunal. And what that means is that when we have a dispute that can't be settled, we can actually bring it in front of a very formally constituted tribunal, adjudicate that, and achieve actual redress by paying people money back or settling an amount, essentially settling out of court on behalf of the consumer. Thank you. Next slide. And you can skip that slide and go on to the next person. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then I hand back to Ilse, who's acting DDG, please.
Thank you, HG. So this is just the C team as it's known. So very much focusing on quite a lot of our key accelerating projects. Next slide. So the sub-programs in this area is our policy and planning, our research team, the knowledge and management, so also with regards to our SECO, who looks after all the G4J work, our economic growth infrastructure initiatives, so in terms of the work done with regards to infrastructure planning, as well as the Atlanta Special Economic Development Zone, as well as the Freeport Saldanha. And then, of course, our digital economy team, and then, of course, the green economy team work as well. So even though they're seconded, we still have some of the projects that's sitting within the department. Next slide. Just some of the achievements with regards to ACES, and I'm sure Matt will talk about their great work that they've been doing in terms of Atlantis, landing that investments to the value of 521 million rand in the last financial year, as well as their infrastructure phase built, which was successful. So we're very proud of the work that they've done. The EDP has been successfully moved over to Department of the Premier. And then, of course, the amazing work in terms of the G4J strategy, which HOD went into. Next slide. So our research team as well, in terms of some highlights, is Prof. Hausman from Harvard. We had a good working, online workshop with him where he was able to just give a little bit of feedback in terms of key economic macro factors that's shaping our thinking. There's a lot of work we're doing here in terms of economic advocacy and leadership. Our team's also been involved with Netbank, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, they've assisted us with certain key pieces of research like our export complexity mapping exercise, which has been extremely useful in terms of our export PFA. Next slide. This is just to show the work that they're doing. So this team is really, we're at the heart of it in terms of our PSP and 5-year strategy process. So this is a big piece of work that's being done in this financial year, as well as a lot of our economic intelligence work, our subscriptions, working with the Department of the Premier, as well as PT, etc. Next slide. And then this is just going to show a little bit of our other work we're doing in terms of Freeport, ACES. We're busy working on an incentive framework, as well as in terms of the investment PFA and the infrastructure. We're looking at how do we unlock more opportunities in terms of using Western Cape government buildings and assets in terms of an investment pipeline. And then, of course, certain catalytic infrastructure projects like our Biovac project, which we're undertaking currently with EMS, etc., and the City of Cape Town. Next slide. And then I'm just going to hand over to Tim to just speak about the digital economy.
I'll be very brief, colleagues. So the digital economy unit, our nature has changed over time. We've emerged from the broadband project from about 10 years ago, and we are now merging or morphing into running technology and innovation. Slide, please. In terms of some of the achievements, I'll just let you take a brief moment to look at the sort of icons there, but many areas related to technology, drones. We've got a lot to do in the area of venture capital. We're looking at areas such as cybersecurity, and we did have a fund last year which helped businesses with their productivity. The next slide is just a brief, there's a few pictures of some events last year. And the final slide is just showing our role in technology and innovation under Growth for Jobs. DDAT is running this overall part, and if you just click once to advance it, DDAT, we are running 9 of the 15 or so areas there. Colleagues, Ilse, back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Next slide. So then just some of the work that we're still continuing with that's quite critical for us in terms of the green economy is the green hydrogen work. So the green hydrogen strategy was successfully adopted by Cabinet. Our carbon border adjustment mechanism work has been undertaken this year, as well as the Western Cape JETS IP. Next slide. So this is quite strategic for us. I'm not going to go into too much work here or feedback. Next slide. And then I'm going to ask Joe if we can hand over to Jacques for program 6. Thank you.
Jacques, go for it,
HOD.
Yes.
We have got a time problem now. We run into time problem.
We can stop here.
Wescro and your other entity to provide us with their presentation that we go into question and answers.
Certainly, Chair. I think we did last week share a condensed version of the initial presentation that we we intended to do last week. So members should actually have a copy of that presentation. And I apologize to our colleagues in program 6 and program 7. But if members can see what content sits there, and perhaps we can respond to any of the questions you may have given that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Wescro, Ronald, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honourable members, HOD. I've got a few slides that I'm going to talk through. I can't talk as fast as the DDAT team has just done. So I'm going to just slow down the pace a little bit. But perhaps the first slide really talks to the Wescro mandate. I'm sure that members are aware that Wescro is the official tourism, trade and investment promotion agency for Cape Town and the Western Cape. There are trade and investment promotion agencies around the world. And in South Africa, most of the provinces also have a trade and investment promotion agency. So even though we promote the Western Cape and the Cape Town mandate, we are proudly South African as an agency. We're a 3C public entity, and I'm not going to go through all of the items on that list, but I just wanted to call out one or two things. We act as the tourism, trade and investment promotion agent on behalf of the province, and we facilitate coordinated destination marketing activities for the Western Cape. We also respond to any requests that the minister makes that he or she believes are important for the economy. We also assist with that. So I just really wanted to share with the committee the mandate. Next slide, please. This is the current Wescro organogram. Given our conversations in relation to G4J and how we scale up the work that we do, we are also currently having a conversation about how to be better structured. We recognize that the clients of the future are going to want us to provide a very different service offering, which requires that we are going to also have to become much more digital as an agency. And we have, over the 5-year period, prioritized a digital transformation strategy. Not just a strategy implementation, and I'll talk a little bit more to that. But we've got all the kind of typical people in the team. Over the next 5 years, we expect that we will also have a chief technology officer. We have somebody that's been appointed on a contract basis, and obviously we look to fill that post in the future at the right time. The next slide really talks to the Wesgro strategic direction. And I do want to say that it is really a privilege and an honor to be part of the broader economic leadership team in the province. And I have the best job in the world because I get up every day and I get to do what I love. And that is to ensure that the Western Cape economy continues to be globally competitive. This requires, obviously, a particular mindset. We have to constantly understand what's happening out there in the world. We have to constantly look at global best practices and make sure that as an agency, we continue to be relevant and fit for the future so that we can support a changing economy. Inclusivity and sustainable economic growth is, I don't think it's questionable. I think that is ultimately what we set out to do. The what of what to do, or our missions, we've got 5, and the first is to differentiate the Western Cape as a leading regional economy. The second is to capture the Western Cape share of global investment. And in terms of G4J, that number is 200 billion by 2035. Obviously, we won't be able to attract all of that investment, but we certainly do have a role to play in attracting that investment. A third big priority is to grow Western Cape exports of goods and services. The G4J strategy anticipates that tourism forms a part of the target to triple exports by 2035. So a lot of work obviously going into that. Given the importance and the strategic importance of tourism in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, in South Africa, because of the multiplier effect and because of the number of jobs that they create and the ability to support small businesses, we have pulled out the focus on tourism, notwithstanding the fact that, of course, it is seen as part of exports in the G4J strategy. And then finally, we're wanting to be a future fit Wesgro, which is relevant, which is fit for the future, and a lot of work has to go into that all of the time. Our strategy is listed on the right-hand side of the document. I'm not going to go into all of those because some of this will come through in the next couple of slides. We are in the process right now. In fact, tomorrow and Thursday, we meet with the Wesgro Board of Directors, where we will be presenting them with the Wesgro 5-year strategy. And this will obviously then form part of the cycle. Next slide, please. I always feel.
CEO?
Yes.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Can you just try and give us a high-level overview instead of going slide by slide?
Okay.
At least by quarter two. By quarter two,
yes.
Then we'll give Izzet an opportunity as well to present.
No problem. No problem, Chair. I will make sure that I'm done by quarter 2. So, Chair, this is the Wesgro key achievements. I always feel like this slide tells the story a lot better than anything else. So, basically, in the FY24 financial year, we invested 178 million rand, and the return on that investment was 7.75 billion in new investments facilitated. 6.8 billion in export declarations achieved. We saw full tourism recovery. 8 of the top 10 markets have recovered to the Western Cape. Obviously, the picture for South Africa looks different. We managed to land 30 new conference bids with a direct economic impact of 1.1 billion, more or less. We have achieved an audience reach of 21.4 million through the work that we do to position the Western Cape both from a tourist investment and export perspective. Through the Cruise Cape Town intervention, we attracted 68 cruise ships to the Western Cape, and the economic impact of that has been calculated at 1.3 billion. Great work we've achieved in terms of our trade innovation through the Cape Trade Portal. I'm not going to go through the numbers. You can see those on the slide. In terms of Cape Town Air Access, we've attracted 5 new routes and 4 new airlines, also with a very big financial impact. The agency is award-winning, and not just local awards, but global awards, even though we compete and compete with very, very big corporate brands. I think that we've learned how to work smartly. The next slide is just really, this also sums it up. We take the Western Cape to the world, and we bring the world to the Western Cape. In the last financial year, we had 93 outward missions, 63 inward missions, and we put the Western Cape flag on 47 countries. So we basically engage with 47 countries that now know a little bit more about the Western Cape. Next slide. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this really just talks to what the priorities are for each of the different areas, and we asked ourselves, how are we going to achieve the share of global investment? How are we going to grow exports and goods and services? And then obviously the words below respond to that. I want to take just one example, and I'm going to focus on the growth of exports of goods and services. Here we've done a number of things. The first is that our export basket is very, very focused on agriculture and agri-processing. And over the next period, we're going to be diversifying the export basket. We want to continue to digitize our value proposition, because with the digitization of our value proposition, we're able to increase scope, scale, and speed. We also want to export. We also want to increase exports into new markets, and here we're focusing specifically on the East, Middle East, and ASEAN. And of course, Africa. So Africa is an existing market, but we will continue to focus on that. And then also to link Cape Town, the Cape Trade Portal, to global e-commerce and marketplace platforms. And we are looking at ensuring that the industry uptakes, that there's a greater industry uptake of the Made in the Cape export brand. We're wanting to grow the exporter base, and we're wanting to grow the buyer base. So that just gives you a feel for how to work with and read the slide. I'm obviously very, very happy to take questions on the slide. Next slide. I think this is the funding for the WESCRA programs. I don't think we need to dwell on that, but it just gives you an indication of where our funding is derived. And then the final slide, I think, is the WESCRA SWOT analysis. This just talks to our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. All of the information is there, and I would be happy to take any questions from the members. Chair, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Next up is Courtney, Report Saldana. So Conrad is going to present.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you, Chair.
Very brief, please. Thanks.
We'll try my best, HOD.
Conrad, you've got 15 minutes. You must just assist in terms of ensuring that we get the gist of what you're up to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, there's another entity as well. So I'm going to maybe respectfully suggest that Conrad tries to do it quicker. With Atlantis SSZ still to present, Chair.
Will do. Thank you, Chair. So just to note, our acting CEO has now been able to join us as well, so he's in the room. So Freeport Saldanha, we are the first SEZ to be located inside of a commercial port. We focused on the energy, maritime, fabrication, repair, and related support services. Specifically over the past few years, in terms of energy, we've started focusing on green hydrogen. It's a nascent industry, as noted by the HOD. Yes, next slide, please. Here, I want to note, yes, that we are one of 12 registered SEZ. So we are part of the National SEZ program, but we are 100% owned by the Western Cape government as a state-owned entity. And I think the important thing to note here is that because we are part of the national program, we are provincially owned, we are located in a commercial port and a municipal space. Mission critical for us is our stakeholders and working close to with them, which is DTIC, TNPA, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, as well as Saldanha Bay Municipality. Next slide, please. I think just to note here that in terms of the SEZ Act, our purpose is to promote economic growth, job creation, and exports. In terms of, and put simply, our vision is to establish a world-class marine energy service center as well as shipyard in Africa. Just to note, towards that, our 2020 to 2025 business framework set out 4 strategic priorities. One is to build catalytic infrastructure and facilities, work towards commercial self-sustainability, build local industry and readiness, and our development programs unit does a lot of work in that in terms of skills development, enterprise development, and as well as contractor development. And then lastly, is to foster business, government, and society partnerships that are professional and accountable. Next slide, please. You can just press the next slide one more time. Okay, just go back. Sorry, I thought it's going to do the, no, sorry, just the organogram slide quickly. Just quickly here, there's this is the organogram at the management level at the company. 3 critical vacancies is the CEO, the executive development programs and executive business development. Also to note that we've got a special projects manager that's looking at driving the work in terms of establishing a green hydrogen hub, as well as the development of port infrastructure at the Port of Saldanha. Next slide, please. Chair, I won't go through each of the focus areas of the business unit, but the 2 things I want to note here is that 1, the purpose of each business unit directly contributes to each of those 4 strategic priorities that I highlighted earlier. And then secondly, by design, each business unit's work is codependent on another business unit's work. So the work between the business units are codependent, and we've done that by design to enhance our holistic value proposition to the market, but also to ensure that coordination between the units are done correctly. Next slide, please. Quickly, in terms of key achievements, we've installed infrastructure in our Northern Precinct. Just to touch on the Smart Skills Center that we've done with Chieta in partnership with the Chemical Center. It was opened in 2022. And through our work of our development programs unit, we've offered since 2013 3,200 training opportunities to local community members. We've worked with GDAC to establish our Freeport operations, which is a big value proposition to the market in terms of the incentives that we offer. One of the key things that we've also done from an ease of doing business perspective, Chair, is working with the local municipalities. So for instance, when we first built our access complex, it took over 3 months to get our building plan approved. SEZ4, which is the picture there, it took less than 15 days to get that building plan approved with the municipality. And then lastly, throughout the zone's operations and investment, and especially the Western Cape's government's investment into the zone, we've managed to return a significant return on investment in terms of our contribution to the economies of South Africa and the Western Cape. Next slide, please. Last slide, Chair. This is just some of the key challenges on your left-hand side with TNPA. There's been delay in construction of port infrastructure. You will know that through Operation Pakisa, some infrastructure in the port was due to be operational by 2017. Latest plans from TNBA indicates that in Saldanha that might only be in 2029. Then another thing to note in terms of a key issue is our high vacancy and turnover rate. I think we're standing at 26% vacancy rate. And over the past few years, we've lost a few members of our executive management team. In terms of the SEZ program, I know the uncertainty with regards to some of the sunset clauses, in terms of some of the tax incentives, that's an issue for all SEZs, but also the uncertain future of the SEZ fund due to the national fiscal climate. Lastly, in terms of operational funding, Chair, currently we do not have a financial allocation from the provincial government for the next financial year. Chair, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Back over to you. And we will be done before 3. Thanks, Matt, go for it.
Thank you, Chair. If we could have the next slide. Chair, honourable members, thank you. Just to point here on the organogram, we've got an organizational structure that talks extremely well to the focus of the organization. We are majority owned by the Western Cape Provincial Government through DDAT, but we also have a minority shareholder with the City of Cape Town. Next slide, please. Our vision is to be the place where Africa's green economy grows. So we are a very focused SEZ. We're looking to contribute and build the growth of the green economy. We're very well aligned in terms of our strategic objectives in terms of the provincial focus in these areas, both from an economic, a social and an environmental perspective. We have a strong focus on financial sustainability and becoming financially sustainable in as short a space of time as possible. We're confident we're going to get there and that we're on track. We have 2 programs. The first one is around our governance and to ensure that we maintain and run a very clean and effective organization. And then the second program is around delivery. Thank you. Next slide. I'm just going to quickly ask Fridolin Brunt, our company secretary, just to talk about our board members and governance, overall governance.
Yes, so we have 7 non-executive board members, 3 of which comprises of national, provincial and municipal governments. So Joanne Johnston is the representative of DDAT. Then we've got Sukiswa Kimani, who is our DTIC representative, and Lance Kreyler, who is the representative for the City of Cape Town. Our chairperson is Salim Fakir. He occupies the second DDAT seat on the board. Then we have Mr. Marshall Julius and Dr. Leon Roman. They are from the Atlantis community. So Marshall Julius is the Atlantis Labour representative, and then Dr. Leon Roman is the community representative for the Atlantis community. Then we have Ms. Konosi Selani, who is our independent director and also the chairperson of our Audit, IT and Risk Committee.
Thanks, Fridolin. We have a really top quality leadership team. Our team is our biggest asset, our staff. And so we are very lucky in that respect, is that we have a full complement on our executive level. Next slide. Thank you. So overall, we aim to contribute to GDP. We are currently reviewing our next 5-year strategic plan, which will be very closely aligned to growth for jobs. Those pictures on the right show you progress on site. That's our entrance gate for our first zone, Zone 1 going up, as well as the main road providing access. We have 2 programs, as mentioned. Next slide, please. Wahida, just quickly on our budget and cost of employment.
Good afternoon. Yes, very quickly, maybe just to mention that our funding is allocated in relation to the mandate for the program. So we have to spend in relation to attracting investment. A chunk of it goes towards that. Then we have to allocate some funding towards our community programs. Most of it goes towards infrastructure and our CapEx, and then we have to support with the administration. In terms of the sources of funding at the moment, we rely heavily on national government for the capital. DDAT provides the operational funding. We earn some interest from those funds, and then very little in relation to the rental income, which we've grown. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So we do see the rental income growing rapidly over the next few years. And in fact, Chair, if you look at this picture, there's a couple of white spots on that diagram. Those white spots represent the only available sites at this stage if all the investors on our pipeline were to land and confirm. Now, I just need to say that we're extremely confident about filling zone 1, which is that zone up at the top of that image. We've got a very well-advanced set of investors in that area. For some of them who've already submitted funding applications to the DTIC. But because of the fiscal constraints in the DTIC and the SEZ fund, some of those developments will be done as a straightforward private sector commercial type deal. In other words, acting pretty much as a conventional property development. We need to do that because of the fiscal constraints. So we're doing a mix of different approaches to ensure that we keep development going. But the interest in the SEZ is growing all the time, and we're actually very excited about the progress that's being made. Next slide, please. We multiply our impact through our enterprise and skills development programs. I'm not going to go into this, but it's a very exciting and impactful part of what we do, and it's had huge appreciation from our investors and from the business community in Atlantis. Next slide. We've done very well. We actually have 4 unqualified audits now, so we're doing well there. The figures are there, they speak for themselves. Please look at them, members of the standing committee. We are very pleased with the impact that we're having with the pipeline, with the interest, and with the progress in what has been tough conditions. Next slide, please. We have challenges, and they relate to funding. The fiscal constraints in government has impacted the SEZ fund, which means that there's no funds available for top structures at the moment. We're assured that will change. We believe it will. There's budget cuts, obviously, that everyone is facing over the next few years. They come at a challenging time for us. We're going to explore other revenue sources, particularly energy revenue sources, will form a much bigger focus going forward. There's obviously a lot of pressure on us to strike the deals, to generate the income, to become self-sustaining, and we need to balance that against a longer-term strategic view of really focusing on green industries. So there's a balance there that we need to find in the short term to get us going, and then in the long term to really focus on the green. There is skepticism on the SEZ program nationally, and I think people are asking, does it work? How does it work? We want to answer that question with action, with delivery, which I believe we are doing. But there is a need for real leadership and direction in this SEZ space, and we hope it will emerge with this new term of government. Thank you, Chair. I'll end it there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, HOD, and thank you, CEO of AZZ, and our CEO from Westcro as well. Yeah, so members, the presentations took a little bit longer, I think now is time for questions or clarity-seeking questions. Can I see hands, those that are having questions? Thank you. See Honorable Bryant. Are there more hands? Honorable Ngondlo and Honorable Constable. So I'll take the first 3 hands and allow the department to answer, and then obviously then we'll follow up. Thank you. Honorable Bryant.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I've just got 4 brief questions, and I know that we're short for time, so I'm going to make them as quick as possible. The first one was in terms of the department's 2 commitments to look into the JET IP and the CBAM and decarbonisation framework. If we can just have a little bit more information there in terms of what they are working on and what the sort of the process is and the intended outcomes there. Secondly, the improved regulation for drones. That was something that came up in one of our other committees as well recently. And what that program is looking into, just a little bit more detail there in terms of the intended uses for those drones. And then in terms of the Wesco presentation, I saw, all the analysis and the programs, etc., and the SWOT analysis. Just in terms of, KPIs and sort of measurable sort of deliverables, is it possible for us at some stage to get a presentation on that so that we can work out, sort of exactly what Wesco is aiming to achieve with those and how they measure success in terms of those key performance indicators. And then lastly, Chair, I think it might be worthwhile for us to conduct an oversight to the Atlantis SEZ at some stage to see some of those catalytic projects that are being mentioned, because I think it's really fantastic to hear about them, but it'll be good for us to also see them firsthand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Ngondlo, you're next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the team for the presentations. And one, I think, appreciates every time to just get more clarity, especially around the growth for job strategy. And I'm hoping the HOD to confirm that the strategy process that has been explained in the presentation is more updating and appraising, given that there's a new administration, because one would assume, as I think as they presented, that the strategy was adopted in the sixth administration, and therefore the question at this point is to update that particular strategy. Is that the case, and whether as part of that, I think I see that by November the process should have been concluded, whether that would include the implementation with the budget of the strategy. And also a question I want to understand around the strategy, the G4J, is that what role is DDET playing in as far as the strategy is concerned, given the fact that particularly if you consider job targets, that almost all departments, I'm assuming, are having to contribute to envisage jobs. So I would want to understand is whether that work of helping set those targets, monitoring that the targets are delivered, is that work a responsibility of DDET? I would just want to understand the role that they are playing, or is such done by the Premier's office. And then one question, I think, in the priority sectors that have been identified, which there is even functions in the department. I just have a question to understand when colleagues refer to inclusivity, what would then be a meaning of inclusivity in as far as energy resilience, in as far as ICT innovation technology, in as far as, Westgrow, I think CEO speaks about the export basket, and I think identifying sectors, so in that export basket, what would be considered in your approach, as inclusive and trying to also ensure that SMMEs are also partaking, in the opportunities that the growth for job strategy in these sectors is set to prioritize. And the last one, I think, is in the Saldanha IDZ. Not Saldanha, I think Atlantis. I think the CEO mentions, I think, the issue around the funding of the SEZ, which is, I think, something that the CEO has been presenting to the committee in the last administration. And I wanted to check whether the entity itself has actually written, and I'm saying in light of the GNU, and I'm not sure what the entity sees as prospects, maybe even the department, of resolving this particular issue, especially the tax or the incentives around the SEZ. Is there any indication of any improvement around that particular issue? And if CEO can explain more about what he mentions about bringing a private sector and what that means in detail in terms of the role and those assets of the state in those precincts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Gondlo. Honorable Constable.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Mine is just two questions and then alignment. Chair, with regards to HOD, with regards to your regional and local economic development intervention, I just want to check, what is your success rate with regards to that? What is the impact that you make within the local municipalities? This is one. Number two, the small town regeneration program that is driven by SALGA. My question is just, where does this fit in with regards to the provincial strategies? Are we part of it? Where does we fit in? And what is the progress on that small town regeneration program? And the last one, Chair, I just want to align myself with Member Bryant to visit maybe some of these projects in the near future. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. HOD, I hand over to you, and you will assist in terms of ensuring that questions are attended to. Thank you.
Of course. So I am going to ask some of my colleagues to actually respond. So the first one would be Ilse with regards to the Jet IP and the carbonization issue. Tim Powell with regards to the drone. We are noting Honourable Member Brandt's comment about Westgrow, and I think Renal, CEO of Westgrow, would be very happy to do a presentation providing more detail about the indicators of success. And then, of course, a site visit to Atlantis SEZ. I'm sure that Matt, CEO of Atlantis SEZ, would welcome a site visit to their premises to see the work that's been done. Shall we just stop at that, and then I'll go afterwards to the next set of questions. Ilse?
Thanks, HOD. Thank you, Honourable Member Brandt. Just with regards to the CBAM, Jet IP and decarbonisation work. So in terms of CBAM, we're responding mostly in terms of the EU. So they published regulations, which is basically certain goods, fertilizer, certain steel, cement, certain products which will be having a carbon sort of tax if they import from certain countries. And it's about how do we decarbonize some of our industries and de-risk them. That has now spilled over with regards to the Green Deal. so that they're no longer just looking at the CBAM regulations from a carbon tax perspective, but also looking at other value chains. So you've got companies like Tesco in the UK who are now similarly need to declare in terms of their value chain. So whether they're importing oranges or no matter what the good from any companies, and we're a key supplier into those value chains, they will then get taxed and they've got to report on it. So our project with regards to CBAM is, one, we've got to educate and inform the industry. Two, we're busy with a tool to help companies be able to calculate their carbon footprint. And then with regards to the decarbonisation, we want to do work in terms of mapping the carbon, the carbon aspects along the manufacturing value chain in particular. And then in terms of JET IP, we're about halfway with the work that's really focusing in terms of developing an investment plan linked to the just energy transition for different industries in the Western Cape. The hardest hit province will be Mpumalanga in terms of the coal-fired plants, but we're the first province looking at how do we develop our own investment strategy, focusing on different industry opportunities with regards to the just energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may just proceed. Good afternoon, Honourable Brian. In terms of the drones, we are Africa's tech capital. Drones are certainly a very advanced market, and South Africa has been a forerunner in terms of regulations. We were the first in the continent to have drone regulations. However, the market is constantly evolving, particularly new business models. One hears of drone deliveries and these type of things. So our objective here is to create a regulatory sandbox. This is an area where testing can be done effectively. Companies can come in here unencumbered by particular regulations and worried about other aircraft. It's a no-fly zone for other aircraft. The intention here is that this will bring in local and international investment. It'll drive other areas of technology businesses and many other business models as well, plus the business tourism spin-off. We are working with organizations such as ATNS, who are the Air Traffic Network Services. They run 10% of global airspace, the Civil Aviation Authority, the South African Air Force, the Drone Council of South Africa, and others, and we have formed a community of practice. And the objective is to deal with the regulatory hurdles so that we can head towards infrastructure development and growing the ecosystem. So we're not really piloting any particular, sorry, no pun intended, we're not pushing any particular uses of drones, but it's to create this regulatory sandbox where they can be tested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim. And then perhaps if we can go to the next round of questions, Honourable Member Nkotlo. So the one was about the strategy and whether it was adopted last year in May by Cabinet. Try and see if I can put in the camera now. So it was adopted by Cabinet last year. We currently have a Cabinet submission that is going to be considered tomorrow by Cabinet so that the new administration, the 7th administration, can reaffirm the Jobs for Growth strategy. The strategy has been very clear that it will be agile. So as things develop, it will have to be responsive. But at the moment, the G4J strategy is going to be hopefully confirmed tomorrow by Cabinet and the new leadership. So that's the first thing. It has been incorporated into the PSP, the Provincial Strategic Plan for the new administration. So the 2025 to 2030 strategy. And it does form part of the 4 core priorities of provincial government. So I just want to affirm that. What role DDAT plays is essentially one, we are coordinating amongst effectively 10 departments within the province, because it is 10 departments that are involved in the delivery of the Growth for Jobs strategy. And in that, we provide a coordinating platform. There are 7 PFAs that essentially meet on a regular basis, the technical teams. There's oversight that we provide support to by the DG in terms of all of the HODs, and then, of course, we report through to Cabinet. What we are currently doing is we are monitoring the current progress on the interventions that exist. But in the next 5 years, what the team is currently doing is working with all of the technical teams across all of the departments to develop and I suppose, unpack the theories of change that exist for each of the priority focus areas into logic models and then indicators. And flowing from this, we will also be able to have transversal indicators so that we are able to track progress across all of the departments to show and demonstrate whether we're actually making progress towards those very ambitious goals for 2035. And so within the PSP, you will be able to then start seeing very firm goals in terms of outcome targets for progress towards the strategy. So that's the one issue. With regards to inclusivity for energy, exports and technology and the range of issues within all of the PFAs, inclusivity is understood, one in terms of your previously at disadvantage, but also women, the spatial issues, townships, etc. And we are hoping that through, well, we're aiming anyway, through particularly the provincial spatial development framework around the spatial issues, to be able to systemically embed those interventions across the province. Also because we are looking at these transversal indicators in a way to actually capture all of the information on the beneficiaries, to be able to track the progress we're making to all of the identified groups, women, people with disabilities, youth, be able to track the progress and the beneficiaries of those, the residents of the Western Cape and how they're able to benefit from the strategy. I'm now going to ask if Matt could please respond to the question about tax incentives and the partnerships.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues. Thank you for that question, Honourable Member Nkondlo. I can actually report a very positive outcome on the tax incentives. We have engaged, as you know, quite intensively with National Treasury and also with SARS. I know that the Standing Committee also undertook to take this matter up. And just recently, we have been informed by SARS that the ITR 14 return now accommodates the SEZs. In other words, all SEZs, not just Atlantis, but all SEZs are now able to claim the corporate tax incentive, which is the 12S allowance, providing they comply. So it's a range of criteria they must meet in order to comply. How much business is done in the SEZ, it must be a unique business, etc. So very positive news on that front to report. And so that is a very positive move. There's still some issues and clarity that's required there, but we are extremely pleased with that development. And I think, you know, everyone has played a role in making that possible. As far as the funding in the DTIC's SEZ fund is concerned, as you know, Treasury makes allocations in terms of the MTEF, and the SEZ fund allocates those funds on a first-come, first-served basis. So come the beginning of the 24-25 financial year, the fund had a number of applications which were pending. When the funding came through and was confirmed in DORA, those funds were then allocated. So that pot of funding basically was emptied almost as soon as the financial year opened. So with the review of budgets and so forth coming up now in the midterm review, we're hoping, and they are hoping, that the SEZ fund would get allocated additional funds. So the intention is still there. We can apply for top structure funding, but it's dependent on the funds being available. We therefore are looking at finding investors also who are willing to just fund their own top structures and where we can do a more straightforward commercial deal. But the principles remain, honourable members, that there's a commitment to develop the area and to be as inclusive as possible in the way that we approach those developments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. And then for Honourable Member Constable's questions with regards to small town generation and the 3 questions, I'm going to ask John Peters to please respond.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try and be succinct just in terms of the impact or the work that we do in the local economic development space. I just want to say that despite the unit being a component on its own, the work that we look at in terms of local economic development cuts across the whole of the department. So whatever we do, we sort of, when our programs are run out, we try as far as possible to focus on the outlined areas. I'll just sort of run down some of the 4 or 5 key areas where we've worked and also show impact. The first one is obviously in the red tape reduction, and a lot of work has gone into land use planning and then also building plan approvals. So in most of the municipalities now we have a electronic approval system and also an assessment system of building plans, and then also with regard to event planning, we also assisted municipalities with regard to that. And then that's again a way of stimulating economic development in those areas. Just the second part is SME development. We have a program that runs out and does outreach projects to local municipalities outside of the metro. And we do that in collaboration with our Department of Infrastructure and any other department involved in SME development, like SUN, like the South African National Roads Agency. We do projects with them. Also, with regard to almost a regulatory component is the SME policy, like I mentioned to you. We've developed the almost a generic model type of SME policy, which municipalities can adopt and then just change as they want to. I mentioned the outreach issue there. The other component is that with regard to capacity building of municipal officials and municipalities, I think our key program there is the PACA, and that is what we basically do there is we get the municipality together with the local stakeholders and try together determine what is the local advantage of the specific area and what needs to be done. So there's a planning component as part of capacity building, but more importantly, an implementation component. So we assist in both. Just to maybe give another example, we would also help municipalities based on what comes out of the IDP to assist them compile decent growth plans and economic growth and development plans on the capacity building side. I think then we're very active in the intergovernmental relationship sphere. For example, today the guys are in the Cape Winelands, where they're facilitating a session with COGTA as a masterclass. So very also active in the JDMA, where we look at all the various departments pulling together and focusing on projects that benefit the municipalities. The other thing that we sort of moving into now and slowly starting to build capacity and momentum is that we are asked by municipalities to almost broker relationships between business and the municipality. Yesterday, I was in a session on Friday, I was in a session where we pulled together the municipality of Saldanha Bay and also the various business chambers to form a grouping that will ensure proper local economic development. Tied in with that, we also crowding in local government SETA because they also provide support to municipalities in terms of capacity building and then also in terms of SME development. With regard to the question on the small town regeneration, yes, certainly, that is one of the frameworks that is inherent to what we do in terms of SME support, but then also in terms of local economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD, and I'd like to allow members, if they have got more questions, to raise their hands. While they are raising their hands, I just want to really sponsor my questions. HOD, I just want to understand with regards to the regional and local that you are talking about. When we talk regional, are we talking SADC or are we talking regional here in the province? The second question obviously pertains to economic planning. Just want to get a feel if there are bills that are being processed or that you are considering that will help you to really do this work of stimulating the economy. But if they aren't, what are the thoughts with regards to bills that this seventh Parliament must consider in order to assist you in your work in terms of really ensuring that you do your work properly and you fulfill your mandate? The other area you talk about the skills development and innovation. I just want to get a feel in terms of your partners that are involved in terms of the skill development, and what are the process in terms of selecting those partners. And if you can also just provide some details regarding the skills programs and obviously the projects that you are involved in that regard. So the other obviously point was made by Honorable Bryant. I think I will definitely want us to do a visit. I do welcome that call that we do a visit. The point of, that we under threat with regards to the carbon emission. I think the question is, what are the kind of engagements that you are having with regards to the betters to just ensure that, there's some level of really understanding and compliance. Also, you talk about agriculture contributing something like 22% of the export. I just want to get a feel in terms of the breakdown between the process and the raw materials that are being exported. I think that's from my side for now. See how many hands? It's 3 hands. Honorable Bryant and Honorable Constable. Is that all, honorable members? So, Honorable Vessel.
My hand is also up, Chair.
Honorable Ngonkyo, I don't see you, but you are noted. Thank you. Honorable Vessel.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm going to start off with a very simple question to Wesgrow, and that is purely asking why Cape Town and the Western Cape is separate in their slogan. Look at finding investments for Cape Town and the Western Cape. I support the Springboks, and Siyakulisi goes with that. So that's just maybe a little mention. But I think further to that, what I also would like to ask is, I know that in the recent past, Wesgrow made the strategic decision to have the agreement with district municipalities and have a sort of a vanilla offering to B municipalities. I think that is, firstly, that caused a fair amount of unhappiness. And secondly, I think I want to know whether they have reconsidered that. And the reason why I ask that or put that forward is, this municipality does not necessarily have a client or a specific tourism sector. Those are predominantly serviced by that specific B municipality. So those are my two questions to Wesgrow. Then in terms of what the earlier member said, or earlier Mr. Peters said with regards to the red tape reduction, I do think that there is still a fair frustration with regards to how business plans, etc., is handled and the way that municipalities go about that. And I know that definitely in predominantly that I know of, the Garden Route is that is holding back a fair amount of investment. So I note that some of the challenges was a lack of human resources. And I was wondering if the department has ever considered creating satellite offices across the Western Cape to assist municipalities. because what we are talking about here, economic development, tourism, agri, most of these are are expenses that sits in a operational budget of a municipality, and we all know that the the operational budgets of municipalities are under severe pressure, meaning these are the first departments to sort of get the brunt of that. These are the first departments that gets severely cut. Then I wanted to latch on to something that Member Constable said, and that is the small town regeneration program of SALGA. And I would like to put it to tourism and to Westgrow that the rest of the Western Cape, the Karoo, the Garden Route area, does not have any automatic spin-off of events that happens in Cape Town. Everything that a city like a George, a Mossel Bay, a Beaufort West, a Oudtshoorn, that they need to, or any sort of tourism activity that they want to attract, they have to start that off themselves. Someone doesn't stay in George for an event that happens in Cape Town. And I would really urge the department as a whole to really look a lot closer into that space, because the rest of the Western Cape is in terms of municipalities are really struggling to get premium events that can boost the economy, like the old car and cars and those sort of stuff. The capital spin-off of these events over the past recent years has significantly declined. And again, that's why I would strongly urge that the department, I don't know, have satellite offices or create some other better collaboration with the municipalities that is sitting a distance away from Cape Town. So that's just a couple of comments and a few questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Wessel. Honourable Bryant, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I think Honourable Wessels has sort of expanded a lot on the Westgrow issues, and you know, it's really just to welcome the offer made by Ms. Johnson on behalf of Westgrow for that presentation. You know, I'm sure you can understand Westgrow is a public entity, I think 3C entity, isn't it? And you know, they will have a report and a performance plan that they can present. So maybe that will help us to clarify some of these issues and to go through those KPIs in some more detail, so we can work out exactly what they're intending to do across the province and how we're measuring that success. So I think that might be a good way forward for us to resolve that at the end of our meeting, that we schedule that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Bryant. Honourable Constable.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Allow me to also thank Member Wessels for that brilliant input about the small town regeneration in the towns outside Cape Town and the benefits that also must come here. But my second part of the question with regards to the small town regeneration, Chairperson, was not answered, but I would love to put it on the resolution then for us to come back and maybe get a progress report on the small town regeneration, so that we can see where it is and what is it that we've accomplished thus far. Thank you, Chair.
Constable, thank you very much. We are going to touch on the resolution once we have finished with our meeting. Honourable Nkondlo.
No, thank you, Chair. Perhaps I may be covered if that gets to be the finality on the Westgro, maybe a separate conversation. Because I think my question initially was not answered around the export basket and how inclusivity will be applied. And one raises this because I think one of the things that the provincial economy, and I think from finance right to here, will talk about is how do you enable local content and considering the supply side issues where sometimes, your new entrants and SMMEs are not necessarily ready to take up these opportunities, and that's limiting, participation in the grand opportunities that may be there and uncovered by Westgro. And I'm wanting, I think, from Westgro to see the level of engagement between themselves, and I'm sure did it through enterprise development, and how such would be happening, so that these opportunities do not just fly over, especially those that may need to graduate to the level of exporting and forming part of that, their products forming part of the export basket. So I'm hoping that something can be responded to into the future. And I must say, I welcome, and it's great news to hear, I think, the progress from what the CEO raises from the SEZ, because indeed SEZ are still very important in our economies, to try and cluster and concentrate investment and also enable attraction of investors in those particular spaces. But I think one thing that one would be interested to know how, particularly by bringing in private investors where government is unable to raise the necessary capital, to try and prepare, the necessary infrastructure required in those spaces. How would you mitigate, the possibility, of access and high rates of property values? Because we know once private sector is in the space, one of the downside would always be, the potential of a cost that may skyrocket. So I'm interested in how that could be mitigated within the SEZ space, so that you still leave the SEZ being a space that is accessible, especially for those that are growing, and building their manufacturing capabilities in the likes of the green technologies in the SEZ in Atlantis, and maybe in Saldanha. And then lastly, Chair, my question, and once again, commend the work done in the enterprise development. And one would say, whilst I think the notion of speaking about the township or informal economy is always something for me that I find is always missing when it comes to this department, including in this growth for jobs strategy, whether it's something that is viewed as is going to be indirectly impacted. But I think one thing that we cannot run away, and it's actually amplified in the provincial economic outlook, in the municipal economic review outlook of the province, that you can't deny the fact that, there is serious inequality, in the province, but also in those particular municipalities. And for me, without focusing directly about the situation of the townships, small rural towns, or informal economy, because even the very issues of red tape, one of the things, I mean, when one would want the information, the extent to which red tape assists also, informal trading that is taking place in these municipalities, where sometimes you would find that the bylaws have not necessarily been able to be agile and also responsive to the needs of moving and flexibility of informal trading spaces. And I think it's an area that I would be looking at. How does the DDET, deal? And I remember at some point you did even mention assisting municipalities around, reviewing bylaws. And I think that work is very important, because what becomes the space to give informal traders and informal economy space, which records actually, when we look at data, it does record improvement even in terms of jobs that we find in those particular spaces. And lastly, to check how is G4J looking at the issue of crime, because again, outside of the construction mafia, because we've had the minister in that department dealing with the issue of the construction mafia, but I'm just saying, outside of that, protection fees, extortion rackets, are abound and are growing daily. And once again, in the informal economy spaces. And I'm not hearing what does the G4J strategy or the department looking at resolving or engaging, around this particular question, which is a daily threat to many who are starting, running, or, are wanting to expand their businesses in the informal spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ngondlo. I was just worried that you are now presenting the plans. But before I hand over to you, HOD, I just want to sponsor 2 more questions. You indicated that you cannot plan for drought while situation, and you said that we're using something like 233 liters of water per day. What are in that 233? Were you able to ascertain what is the amount that is lost due to leakages? And is there plans that you are really assisting the municipalities to ensure that, we stop this leakage? The last one was you talked about research, and that the world average is about 2%. And we in South Africa, we're doing something like 0.6%. What is the average in terms of the research work that we are doing here in the Western Cape, or in the city of Cape Town for that matter? Whatever numbers that you have, if you can share, I'll appreciate. Thank you very much. Over to you, HOD.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and to the honourable members. I will go through some of the questions and then just ask some of my colleagues just to provide the answers to the others. So, Chair, you asked about what does regional mean? It depends on the context. So sometimes when we talk about regions, we're talking municipalities or group of municipalities. Alternatively, it could actually mean Southern Africa. So it really depends in the context in which the word is used. You also asked about the bills being processed. So in the slide pack, we have listed 3 legislative bills that we'd like for us to, we're going to initiate. One is really around consumer affairs. There's been national legislation that has been enacted since we had last passed ours. And so we do need to actually make sure that ours is reflective of what national dictates that our provincial mandates. So we need to update the current legislation so we can align to the national legislation around consumer affairs. The second is the development of a Provincial Tourism Act, which we believe that will provide an enabling policy framework for destination management, and will also assist in terms of support for municipalities around their tourism activities. And then the third is essentially the transfer of administration of the EDP from DDAT to the Department of the Premier. And so a proclamation was done at the beginning of this financial year, or this year, in February, that essentially it transfers the administration via proclamation to the Department of the Premier, and now we just need to make sure that the Act is in alignment to that proclamation. The reason and the rationale was that economic development is not just a DDAT function, but it tends to cut across the socio-economic environment and stakeholders, and it was better placed for it to be coordinated by the Department of the Premier. And so please expect those 3. There may well be others that we will consider as we go along with the G4J strategy and the implementation thereof. But please be mindful that through John Peters, we catalyzed essentially a policy around the impact of legislation. So sometimes we legislate, and the question is, it creates more red tape. And so we're always mindful of this before introducing new legislation. So that's the second issue, the second question you asked, and then you asked a range of questions around the skills development initiative. I'm going to ask my colleague Nizam Joseph to respond comprehensively to that. And then with regards to the just before I put him on, just to talk about the breakdown of the materials being exported. What we can do, Chair, with your permission, is send you a document that provides the breakdown of all the, of the major SIC codes, the standardized industrial codes, that gives an indication of what is actually exported from the Western Cape, if that's okay. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Nizam?
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Chair, for the question. I believe there was two questions. One was around the partners, who the partners are, and the selection of the partners. So Chair, the partners to us is really important. We have several categories of partners, and I'll go through all of them. From a skills development perspective and an employment creation, we have lead companies and host companies. Amongst these companies from 2020 to 2023, we facilitated 15,526 full-time employment opportunities for unemployed youth. From 2021 to 2023, the same partners we leveraged 419,718,973 rand from our partners. Our partners would include, and the bulk of these funds, and we undercount that because we don't count all the funding that was leveraged. So from 21 to 23, it's probably in the region of about 250 million that we leverage from external sources. So, and our partners would typically fund, we only fund a very small component of our skills component, which is experiential learning. Our partners will fund the skills development. So it's a full learnership or full accreditation, or a vendor certification like a Microsoft Certified Solution Development. Sorry, I've got the flu, Chair. Skills within the sector. Our partners also provide the top-up funds. So whatever we put in terms of stipend support, our partners would up to double what we put in from a stipend support. And obviously the partners then, 80% of all the learners on our program that complete the program, we expect our partners to provide jobs, which they typically do. Our partners, in terms of where those partners reside, very often we look at what the characteristics are of the unemployed, and we look at those sectors that could typically absorb. So for example, we would choose partners in the clothing and textile sector because those individuals typically would not require matric. Now that's really important because 50% of our population does not have matric. So we choose the sectors that line itself with the characteristics of the unemployed. In other sectors, like the BPO sector, like Joe mentioned early on, those sectors typically would only take matriculants, but we work with them so that they can also then take on kids without matric. Okay. So those are our partners there. And so typically we have about 100 or so companies that we work with. With respect to the selection of the companies, the selection it's very simple. It's a very open, very transparent process, and it's really a competition amongst those companies. So we rank the companies. We've got a formula that we use, and we rank the stipend support that they would give the learner, the permanent jobs, the percentage of permanent jobs, which ranges between 80 and 100% that they will provide our learners. And we also assign points for the type of skills programs that they will provide. So our skills programs up to 200,000 Rand, that's funded by the private sector. In the case of IT, it's up to 80,000 Rand per learner. and then a normal learnership will typically cost around about 26,000 Rand. So those are the categories with respect to our experiential learning. Then we've got a set of partners that we deal with in terms of purely funding. So the bulk, one of our primary funders is actually National Treasury that would fund our skills programs. They would fund up to about 100 million Rand a year for our skills programs. And then we also have the SETAs. And then we've got corporates, what we refer to as lead companies. These are companies that's based in Gauteng. They want to fund job creation and skills development in the Western Cape, but they don't want to benefit from the learner. So they would take their CSI money or their skills money and direct it into the Western Cape, where Western Cape companies and Western Cape unemployed individuals benefit from this particular programs. We also have international funders like USAID, and that gets routed in our programs by a third party, and those are some of those particular funded partners. Then we've got partners in the academia space. So key to the G4J strategy is ensuring that the ecosystem works better. So for that, we look at developing new academic instruments. So we will work with TVET colleges, with universities and other colleges in developing new curricula. We know that we have to scale these curricula, and for that, the modality in how we deliver is really important. We also work with universities. Then that modality, so we will move away from sort of an in-classroom environment to a more AI, VR, or distance learning. So we'll amend those modalities in that particular way so that we can scale more. And I'm sure you'd all know that the universities are full, the TVET colleges are full, and if higher education says we're not going to build more universities, then we have to develop new modalities for youth to access those academic instruments. And then obviously a very important partner that we have is the Department of Basic Education. There we would take some key occupations and embed them in the basic education system, particularly in instruments like the LO. So the BPO sector says only these characteristics. We'll go to basic education. We develop a program at basic education where the outcome are the characteristics that companies typically require. We're not only using it for BPO, but also for blue-collar workers like plumbers and pipe fitters and mechanics. We're embedding that in education. So when these kids leave the education system, they can be gainfully employed in the sector. They might not have a red seal, but because of this relationship with our partners, we can have an education system that better responds to industry needs. It's also really important to also understand that there is a challenge, and we have to work with those partners in what the education ecosystem looks like. So 53% of companies says that we can't grow because we don't have the skills. And very often those skills are semi-skilled workers, which are workers which we should be able to support straight from the education system. So we're trying to also look at what the demand is, working with those partners in saying that we require skills and we can't find them, and develop instruments to support them. Thank you, Chair. I think that those were the two questions that I was requested to answer.
Thank you. HOD, there are still a few questions outstanding. Thank you. HOD, I think you're still muted, or what's going on? We can't hear you. Can you hear HOD, colleagues?
No.
No.
Also, in the interim, do you think you could answer the questions on the exports, and then maybe we could ask Westgrow to answer the questions that were addressed to them?
Sure. Rashid, Joe mentioned that we will rather submit a formal written response in terms of the sector breakdown for the exports, which is not a problem at all, which we will do.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, HOD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Okay, so just the difference between the city and the Wesgro logo. I think at the beginning I said that it takes a team to land an investment. And so the city of Cape Town's logo around investment, their investment hub, is essentially to complement and support the work that Wesgro does. So that's just, and they all obviously do quite a lot of ease of doing business. So they have an entire team that then mobilizes across their various departments to make sure that an investor comes in, if they need EIA support or cost tracking, then that all of that is actually provided in one space within the city and the municipality. So that's just a bit of an explanation around the logo. With regards to the B municipalities, I'm going to ask Ronaldo if you could just briefly just respond to that. But there's two things that I maybe want to say to the questions that pertain to the tourism and the municipalities. So one, Wesgro does conduct impact analysis, and we must remember that events, people don't only just stay in the municipalities. Through the promotional work that gets done, those tourists are encouraged, or business tourists are encouraged to actually travel elsewhere. And secondly, the economic benefits in terms of the supplies are not necessarily just concentrated in the municipality, the metro. So that's the second issue. And the third is that there's also the event funds that is to try and encourage events, not only again in the metro, but it's open to the entire province. But perhaps if Ronald could touch on a little bit more and quite briefly on that. With regards to the red tape reduction, we would totally agree that there is still quite a lot of frustration, but remember, this is within the mandate of the municipalities rather than the department. And so what we have been doing is through John and the work that they're doing is around capacity building, but also support around actually implementing efficiencies through digitization in the municipalities, and then trying to see we can encourage municipalities to replicate it if it works in one or two of the municipalities. So to try and encourage and support municipalities to get to that space where there is genuine ease of doing business within their particular areas. Can I ask, we acknowledge the Wesgro presentation request. We understand it will come through the resolutions, but Ronald, if I could just ask if there's anything you want to add with respect to the tourism points that our members have made.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, committee members, HOD. So maybe just there are a couple of, obviously a lot of different questions, and I think it would be useful to come and do a much fuller presentation to the committee. But just some initial, so Cape Town and the Western Cape is separated in the legislation. And it's so Wesgro is a provincial and a municipal, so it's not municipal, a city mandate. And we're funded by both the city and by DDAT. And of course, the mayor and the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Agriculture, Tourism and Economic Opportunities, they both have a role in appointing directors to the Wesgro board. So it's a kind of historic, there's an historic reason for why the two are separated. With respect to, so there were quite a couple of questions around the districts and tourism, etc. So the concept of a vanilla agreement with the districts, I think that is as old as 3 years ago. I've been in the role for coming up 3 years, and that has stopped. So I think that was something which certainly the previous team subscribed to. What we have, and I will be happy to share it, we've actually got all of the work that Wesgro has done across the different districts. We've actually got the results for each of those districts, and it's disaggregated to investments facilitated, export declarations achieved, conference bids landed, export advancement training that has been done, content creation in relation to campaigns that have been done, hosting. So we also host tourists, not tourists, trade in the different regions, and we also host and co-fund tourism leisure events. And I've got a whole list of some of the leisure events that Westgrow has co-funded. It includes a whole range of different opportunities, and this is really to promote regional spread, and also obviously so it's regional spread in the first instance. So I'm happy to share that list with the committee, and the amounts that we've sponsored. With respect to leisure events and business events, I've just spoken about the leisure events that we sponsor. With respect to business events, in the last financial year, we landed 30 events in the province, and 2 of them were in the Cape Winelands, 2 of them were in the Cape Overberg, and let me just see where else. And of course, the rest were in the city of Cape Town. I think the business events is obviously a complicated process in that the venues have to have the capacity to host up to 300 people. The venues have to be accessible. It has to be multi-purpose venues, has to be close to the airport. It has to be easy to find, and you also have to have services that are accessible, like AV, catering, etc. So those are a little bit. So when we take, companies wishing to, or associations wishing to host events in the province, we take them to the different areas depending on the size of the conference. So if it's a bigger conference, we have to obviously take into account, some of the sizes. We are a 3C entity. We do have an APP. We do have an annual report. And in fact, I have popped the KPIs for Westgrow for the last 5 years into the chat, and would be happy to share that in a lot more detail. With respect to the inclusivity that Member Nkondlo asked about, we said that so there are 2 issues. The one issue relates to the basket of exports, and our basket of exports is very heavily weighted towards agriculture and agri-processing. And of course, there is an effort now to diversify the export basket to include manufactured value-added goods and services. With respect to the current baskets of exports, where there's obviously in 2023 we reached a total of 112 billion rand of exports in the agriculture space, of which 47.1 billion was in agri-processing. So, and we can provide a little bit more granularity to some of that information. And I'd also be more than happy to answer the question about how we're going to achieve inclusivity in terms of, inclusivity in terms of how we expand the, the number of Black exporters in the Western Cape. I should point out that we do run an export advancement program in the Western Cape, and we run this across the different regions. In the last year, we exposed 233 exporters to the export advancement program, and we also ran 2 Black owned wine missions to both Denmark and New York. And I would also be very, very happy to talk a little bit more about that. So there's quite a lot that we can talk about, quite a lot of questions, and and I think that is probably I try to do that as succinctly as possible, but I'm happy to take a lot more questions if necessary.
Chair, may I continue, or? the time, is there time constraint?
You can continue, HOD. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm now going to just perhaps ask Ilse just to talk. I know that Renal had spoken to the export readiness, but there's also additional programs that the department is doing to complement that of Wesco. She may want to touch on it. But I perhaps just wanted to add on that we also in the department understanding that export is quite difficult. So not difficult because you have these tariff and non-tariff barriers, and the logistics of it is a lot more complicated than supplying to the domestic market. And so there are programs run by Program 2 to try and support our SMEs to get better access or better understand how to actually supply to government. And there are a number of activities that take place with regards to that. And we work very closely in partnership with our Provincial Treasury with respect to that. So it's also just to note that when we look at exports, we also look at the domestic market and how we can optimize that for our SMEs. I'm going to ask Tim just to respond, please, to the R&D question, please.
Thank you very much, HOD. Thank you, Chair. In terms of research and development, this is something that is monitored by the Human Sciences Research Council, HSRC. They have a factor that they call GERD, which is to do with the gross domestic expenditure on research and development. Our national target is indeed 1.5%, and it was reported earlier that our national figures are rising, but we are still sitting at about 0.62%. For the Western Cape, we account for just over a quarter of national, 26.6%. But if you calculate that, our percentage, we are sitting at 1.5%. So our figures match the national target, but obviously we are weighed down by other provinces that are not able to perform at this level. Chair, I trust that satisfies the question. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to just add to what Tim just said now. So another challenge that we have in South Africa generally is that we may do R&D, but the uptake of R&D in terms of its commercialization lags that of other developed countries. And so that is a major challenge that we have. And that's why the PFA, the Priority Focus Area, talks about venture capital, because venture capital implies that essentially that technology, that R&D is actually being turned into a business, an opportunity, which is then obviously creating jobs and GDP growth. So I thought I could add that to it. I'm going to try and see if I can wrap up some of the questions and then ask if any of my colleagues want to add to what I've said. So the one thing, and maybe just to add the issue around the red tape reduction, Honourable Member Wessels had asked about whether we could consider satellite offices. Now, the department used to have that. We had the Red Door initiative that was led by John Peters that provided small business support in a very tangible, physical way across all of the regions. Because of sort of a shift in funding priorities, unfortunately, we had to shut that down. We are hoping when our fiscus budget allows that we can start reconsidering that. But in the meantime, what we are looking at doing is essentially looking at what basket of support the department provides to the regions. Now, we provide, for example, through the Meadow, really good data to the municipalities. Our observation, however, is the capacity of those officials to turn that data into strategies and into plans that they are able to implement. And so the question then is, what additional support is required from the department for those municipalities to come up with strong LED strategies, and what other support we can provide in the units in terms of the digital transformation, green economy. How do we make sure that the municipalities are able to benefit from the opportunities it provides, and then also in terms of skills development. So it's not quite creating physical satellite structures, but making sure that we have that virtual support that's available to the municipalities. So this is work that we are currently doing, and hopefully we are able to articulate in our 5-year strategy. So that's the issue around the satellites. With regards to the private sector involvement, this is a work in progress, and I wouldn't say it's a concern, but we are intending that if private sector comes into play, that it doesn't exclude certainly our smaller SMEs. And so that would then would be in the conditions of the terms of reference that we put into a call of proposals, if that is the route that we take. But these are considerations as we chart new ways of actually leveraging private sector into our infrastructure. This is definitely some of the conditions that we'll be looking at including as the conditions, if you like, of the partnerships. So if that gives the members any assurance. With regards to the township, the crime, when we did the G4J, we developed it. We actually had an entire appendix that looked at all the linkages to the other VIPs within the province, including wellness and including safety. So we were quite explicit in each of the PFAs what their requirements were for safety and crime. And I think it's actually mentioned in the strategy. How that is now played out in the provincial spatial plan is that our department and me personally actually participated in the various workshops so that as they developed the PSP, VIP, sorry, that's a lot of acronyms, the provincial strategic plans, very important priority of safety, you would basically now see our economic imperatives being captured in the safety priority of the province. And so going forward, we have to work a lot more closely with them, but it's also making sure that their strategy and that our requirements are not add on to what they already planning, but it's already incorporated into their plan. And this is the way that we intend to actually work quite transversely with our colleagues in the other departments, and to affirm, to sort of further iterate the point, the head of department of POX is basically participating in the G4J HOD steercom. So you also asked questions with respect to the informal economy and the township economy. We're mindful that the township economy includes both formal and informal, and that even in your more formalized spaces, you would have a presence of the informal economy. And so we understand the nuances of this. We also understand that being informal or formal is not binary, and that it's a continuum. So it's been quite sensitive to these nuances, if you like. So we are developing and intending member to develop our township strategy. We are also looking at a way that accommodates for the fact that each township is different, their opportunities are different, their challenges are different, but we also cognizant that there are horizontal enablers, bylaws being one of them. And so if one addresses some of these bylaws that constrain and, for example, criminalize activity, business activity just because of a zoning law, then this is something that we intend to include in the strategy and also implement within the context of the ease of doing business that particularly affects our businesses and entrepreneurs in the townships. You asked the question also, Chair, about the water. So water within the Western Cape in terms of leakage is about 26% on average across all of the municipalities. That's obviously a considerable amount of water that's wasted. That's why the plan is to try and address and reduce the amount of leakage that takes place. But having said that, our sister provinces, their leakage ranges between 50 to 60%. And that's actually the international norm, because 60% and even more is what London actually has in terms of water leakage. So there's been quite a lot of progress made in the Western Cape around reducing the amount of leakage, but there's still more to be done. And we're hoping the use of technology will help us actually get there and reduce it even further. I think we answered all the questions. If I have not, and if any of my colleagues would like to add to anything I've said, then please do go for it. Through you, Chair.
Thank you, HOD. Honorable members, I think HOD has really provided us with comprehensive answers. And I don't think that there is any outstanding question that was not answered. There are obviously commitment that they will provide us with written answers on certain matters that we ask, including the export materials that are obviously agriculturally processed and that are not processed. So that they have promised to provide in writing. So, honorable members, can I say that we are all covered in terms of the questions and answers? Okay, I don't see any hands, so I take it that the members are very satisfied with HOD and the entities. Really, thank you very much for making yourself available, and that you did not even ask for a 10 minutes or 5 minutes break. You know, I'm really proud of you, and thank you very much and your cooperation. I know that your presentation was very long, but really, I think you did a good job in terms of enlightening us and ensuring that we understand your department, so that when we hold you to account, there is nothing that we don't know about this department. Now we know everything about you. We are going to go a little bit deeper with Westgrow, so we will definitely provide Westgrow and obviously visiting AEZ. Sorry, my acronym are very poor, but you understand what I'm saying, HOD. We will visit and we'll obviously be doing effective oversight. Thank you very much. We are going to excuse you, and then I'll allow members maybe just a 2 minutes leg stretch, and then we come back, we look at the resolutions and the minutes, and then we'll be done in the next 5 or so minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair and the Standing Committee. And thank you very much to my colleagues.
Thank you.
Good members, just 2 minutes leg stretch, and then we can come back at 17 or 18 minutes past, and then we proceed with the minutes and the resolution. Shireen?
Yes, Chairperson.
Are you back? Can you fly to the minutes
Sure.
that we can deal with them?
Chair, just confirm that you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it
Okay,
here.
great.
Honorable members, these are the minutes of the 13th of August. I think the attendance, as you can see, if there's anyone that has been omitted by mistake, please indicate. And we can proceed, Shireen. These are the officials that attended. Right, so we did the welcoming of the members and the departments. They provided us with an introductory briefing on Department of Agriculture and CASIDRA. And we adopted the minutes, and just on the resolutions. We have resolved we made a few undertaking that CASIDRA to respond in writing, and that consider that a briefing by Department of Economic and Development and Tourism on 20th of August, which was done today, that we invite Department of Agriculture to brief us on biosecurity with specific reference to the EU ban on exportation of red meat from South Africa. And the fourth being inviting CASIDRA to brief us regarding, provide a comprehensive brief with regards to their mandate, and obviously take an oversight as was proposed by honorable members to Philippe and Skapskral Agricultural Area. So those were the 5 resolutions that we agreed upon. Any members to propose that we adopt the minutes? Any hand?
I am happy to adopt the vessels.
Thank you. Dirk Wessel proposed. Honorable Constable, are you seconding?
I'm seconding, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Matters arising? Arising. Thank you. Can we deal with the resolutions? In terms of the resolutions, what I have here is that we'll definitely need Wescro to provide us with full presentations, work done across all districts. I did to members, do we request the presentation be done in writing, or should they appear before the committee? Included in that is that there was a request with regards to KPI. Should they provide us in writing, or should we ask them to do a presentation, full presentation? Honorable Brand.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I mean, the request was, obviously to establish whether they had those KPIs in place, and it seems as if they do. But from what I could tell from Honourable Wessels and Honourable Constable and others, there is a need to ask questions as well. So I do think a presentation might be worthwhile. Even if they send us the presentation beforehand, we then have the opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you, Honourable Brand, for clarity in that regard. I take it there's no objection, Honourable Constable.
Chair, sorry, I missed you at some point. Are we talking about a small town regeneration issue?
No, this is with regards to Wescro, and obviously they did attempt to answer the question of the small town support, or the support that they provide to the municipality, and they are quite happy to provide a presentation and around the work that they are doing in the small towns.
Chair, can I add something?
Yes, you can go ahead, Honourable Constable.
Yeah, can I request that when they submit to us the progress, that they maybe invite also SALGA to to make a presentation, a full presentation on the small town regeneration program.
Honorable Constable, let me hear. So how do you want the resolution to be written that Westgrow, together with SALCA, present to the committee as it pertains to support being provided to the small towns? Is that how you want to phrase it?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you, Honorable Constable. I see Honorable Ngondlo raise the hand.
No, I wanted to support Member Bryant regarding bringing the Westgrow so that we can engage, but to save time, try and get, I know they gave us presentations upfront a day or two, but if they could give it to us earlier, and then we'll reduce their time of presentation so that we've got sufficient time to engage with them. And then I would think on what Member Constable is raising. I don't have a problem in principle with that, but I would think if we're going to get SALGA involved, perhaps the presence of the department will also be important, given that SALGA Westgrow would do a component, which is only tourism promotion in as far as small rural towns are concerned, unless the intention is to really just focus the discussion around what Westgrow is doing in that regard. So I was just saying, perhaps at that time, if we agree to include SALGA, we may need to bring back also the department, especially the enterprise development program that is actually working with municipalities. Thank you, Chair.
Be important that either the HOD or the enterprise is part of this discussion, as they are really the mother body of Westgrow as such, because it is their entity that will be coming to present. So we'll definitely need to invite the HOD. And in as far as I'm concerned, we should be inviting Westgrow through the HOD. And obviously the HOD will be part of this presentation, I am sure. So the other thing, Honorable Ngondlo, that I thought was that you touched on the inclusivity and obviously to determine as to what is the Westgrow doing to ensure that we got the local products that are moving here from our province, both in the rural, maybe in the township, and obviously in the city, that is being exported. I do not know if this is the answer that you received to where you're comfortable with, or the way that I am, presenting it. It is the way that you envisage the answer to be, chip, city, and obviously rural inclusivity of seeing how we are really doing in that regard. I give over to you if you want to comment on that one. But I like the question. Let me say that.
Yes, Chair. And I think the CEO, I think grasp it well so that we can get to really understand what is the export awareness and export readiness that as Westgrow they are doing. But you would recall that also the department said they also, I'm not sure whether they say it's program 2, that is also doing exactly that. And I think it's always good to know what exactly are they doing, because in our constituency work and when we meet up with businesses, small businesses that are interested at actually in the future, exporting, we know what to say. So I would think that I think you've captured it very well, especially of ensuring that even in that export basket they are raising, they are also considering expanding, as she said, some other products, which I think may fall, in some of the capabilities of emerging businesses. So yeah, thank you very much. I think that presentation of Westgrow and engagement would really assist to get more insight on the work.
Okay, so I hope our procedural officer captured that, got the gist of that. Is there any other resolution that I don't see any other that I might have written that we might bring it into resolution? Maybe from my side, it will be these bills that the department is talking about, maybe to also, give us a presentation on them at some stage or another, so that we are prepared in terms of the bills, because as you know, that bills take long to process, and at least if we have got an idea of the bills, as we are lawmakers, so if we really engage on bills early to understand what is on the pipeline, that will really be much better. I think that I propose that be a resolution as well. Honorable members, if there is no any other resolution, then I would say then we can adjourn the meeting. Procedural officer, are you? Oh, I see a hand from Honorable Ngondo.
No, two small ones, Chair, in the resolutions. If we could keep track, and maybe not now, but in the immediate future, that we invite the department to share with us the work they're doing in the red tape reduction unit, so that we just get a comprehensive picture of the nature of red tape reduction issues, especially pertaining, to unlocking these bylaws that are sort of constraining informal trading, both informal and in informal spaces. But secondly, the issue of crime, and that one may be a matter that will have to be a joint committee, maybe with the Committee of Safety, just to understand as part of the G4J, how are they ensuring that the threat of crime does not necessarily hinder, the type of job prospects that through the G4J, the province is intending to achieve. Thanks, Chair.
Member, I cannot really agree more with you on that one. I think investments, and especially the state grants in township, are under threat as a result of this extortion activities that are taking place. I definitely think that is one of the areas that we got to look at to protect our investment that is coming from this portfolio committee, which is a very, very important portfolio committee in terms of ensuring that we create employment, and we have obviously the challenges that are faced by our people in the townships. Honorable members, the next meeting, obviously we will communicate with you, but what is important is that we definitely need, when we do our next meeting, which I assume, if I'm correct, and I will probably just hand over to procedural officer to indicate that, is that we might really by that time be able to go through some briefings that we might have to look at comprehensively, and obviously look at the oversight visits that have been suggested, and then we take it from there in terms of scheduling and creating a program for the next couple of months. And obviously legislation will come in and take precedent, but I think we got to have an idea of what we are dealing with going forward. So, honorable members, with those few words, I just want to say really thank you very much for bearing with me and with the department. It's 4:30 already. We way over time. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair.
Nomfundo?
Yes, Shireen.
Okay, have you stopped?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, my darling, for staying over time. Appreciate it.
Okay, see you on Friday.
Okay, I'll see. Okay, Norms.
Okay, all right. Suraj.